like ethnic cleansing. So I'm sorry if they didn't want to accept that deal. It's like saying, oh yeah, the British went to Ireland and said, we'll split the land 50-50 with you. And the Irish rejected it, so they're bad. The complete rewriting of history here just shows you how much of a hardcore Zionist this guy is. Saying that, like, you know, in 1967, Egypt and Syria, of course, just invaded innocent Israel, like completely ignoring all the provocations that Israeli settlers had constantly done in stealing more land from these countries, which caused this conflict in the first place. Of course, a lot of it was motivated by, you know, freeing Palestinians, but they were provoking others in the region, and they wanted to provoke them into a war. The good book I read by a BBC Middle Eastern correspondent called Jeremy Bowen has very intimate details about the lead up to the war and how much the Israeli cabinet, not the Israeli prime minister at the time, but the Israeli cabinet really wanted war with the other states. So you're seeing his narrative of Israel builds a country on another country, and it's actually the Palestinians' fault for constantly rejecting all the deals ever. They're so unreasonable, aren't they? They're so unreasonable. How could they reject like a 50-50 split of their country? You would do that, wouldn't you? You would do that, Americans, if Canada just came into your country and said 50 for us and 50 for you, or if, you know, China invaded your country and said 50 for you, 50 for us, you'd accept that. And of course, as like an Irish person, the English didn't just do 50-50 to our country, they just took it all. And when we finally had a successful resistance movement, they still kept a lot of Ireland for themselves, which has caused more problems and actually caused Ireland to have a civil war over accepting a deal that allowed the British to remain in control of parts of Ireland. So with all that context, it's really not surprising to people like me that, yeah, Palestinians wouldn't be okay with that. But to people like Pacman, it's of course the Palestinians that are the bad guys here. So that is David Pacman in October and November 2023. He used the opportunity of the conflict to suddenly start making videos on Israel again. You know, told us in 2021, what more would he have to say? But he used 2023 to launch these Zionist rants about how it's all the Palestinians' fault. Now, if you actually search on his channel, he's hardly talked about Israel since, because it probably dawned on him, like, the horror of what was happening, how wrong he was, but that's also bad for business, because if you keep talking about this and actually put forward your own political points of view on what's happening, which you know a lot of your audience would increasingly become more horrified by because of the escalating violence, you'd probably stop making videos on it and revert back to the old Trump is bad, which he did do. But I did find some instances where he did continue to talk about it. These are still old videos, and he hasn't made any recently. So I got these saved. One is called Caller Confronts Me About Hamas vs. Israeli Terror. I want to watch a bit of that. And then Caller Confronts Me with questions about Israel and Gaza. So these take place in March 2024, and these are the last two videos I can find on his channel about this. Now, maybe there are some other videos. YouTube's search function isn't great these days, but I did spend a lot of time trying to find more videos about this, and these are the only two recent ones, which aren't recent at all, that I could find.
And then I guess kind of relating to that, would you support like a permanent ceasefire in Gaza right now?
I would absolutely support a permanent ceasefire if both sides were willing to do it. As I've said before, and as Bernie has said, and Hamas has said, they will continue trying to do the attacks like on October 7th. So practically, I don't know how you do such a ceasefire, but I would completely support an end to hostilities if both sides were willing and stuck to it, yes.
Just quickly on that one, again, plays into this consistent narrative he's had that it's actually Hamas that never accept the ceasefire. If you've been following the ceasefire negotiations throughout, they've often agreed to it only for Israel to change it and make the deal basically completely untenable to anyone. Like, no one would accept what they're offering, and the Israelis have constantly derailed negotiations by putting this stuff in, and that's why Hamas don't accept it. Yeah, Bernie Sanders, who's also a Zionist, saying you can't negotiate with them, is also, in my opinion, racist and believing that the Palestinians basically cause their own suffering. But no, if you follow that even back in March, it's pretty clear that the side who don't want to negotiate, and they've constantly said it because it's, yeah, the fascist government of Netanyahu, it's Israel that don't want the ceasefire. And it's pretty clear they're never going to feel pressure to do one. That's why That was in March, and they've continued to do this. They've continued, and they've actually expanded their war, which David Pakman seems to have not spoke about either. So again, it shows you everything about these people, that they will use certain opportunities to say this stuff, but will not actually cover this conflict properly because, in my opinion, of financial considerations. So let's watch one more.
Hey, I was just wondering, like, with the whole Israel and Gaza thing, like, how come when Hamas does kill civilians, it's considered terrorism, but when Israel does it, it's like moral, righteous? Like, what's the difference here?
There's two different things here. One is there are some media outlets that have a bias one way or the other, and that can explain how they cover the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There's another aspect to this also, which is that there's a difference between civilians as collateral damage, which is still tragic, but different than a policy of finding and killing civilians. Now, I know just by saying that, lots of people will be furious with me and they'll say, David, Israel does have a policy of deliberately targeting civilians. We're not going to be able to have that fight right here, but at least theoretically, Mr. Mosley, does it make some sense to you that there's a difference between a military carrying out operations and accidentally killing civilians? We could say not enough concern, disregard, but different than Hamas, for example, saying, let's find civilians to kill of no military or strategic value whatsoever. At least theoretically, do you agree that there is a difference between the two things?
Yes, but I have seen videos online where there's like drone footage of like they're just aiming at people that are just like walking or with their kids.
I am aware that over the last 10 days, there was a video floating around purporting to show drone strikes on random Palestinian civilians. And that was the initial narrative. I read up a little bit about it. One of the things that seems to be very clear is that this is so crazy to think about it this way, but the idea that Israel would take the time and incur the cost to randomly target 4 civilians just walking down the road doesn't comport with anything we know about how the Israeli military operates. You can say a lot of things about the Israeli military. I struggle to think that they are going to, quite frankly, waste ordnance on 4 random civilians walking down a road.
So I do kind of love how this question got him squirming, but yeah, pretty gross. Is this like the IDF spokesperson or something saying that there's a difference in theory with what the IDF do and what Hamas do, because the IDF in theory don't try and target civilians, and actually I doubt they would, because it'd be a waste of money and ordnance. Everything we've seen, everything we've read has made it clear they target civilians as a matter of policy. Like, all this stuff about human shields was always an excuse if you weren't a fucking idiot, but obviously we've seen it now, we've seen the footage, and we've actually heard about how commanders basically don't discipline their troops if they go out and commit war crimes, and they're just allowed to do it basically. And on top of that, they actually do target civilians. They target journalists, like we've seen that recently, texting journalists saying you better stop your coverage or we'll kill you. Then they kill them. We have seen this, and doctors have attested to how snipers have targeted children. This is what this guy wants to talk about. This is in March, by the way, but at the same time, we knew stuff like this back in March. It's just pretty clear this guy's support for Israel is just something you can never change him on. But even him squirming right there, I think, is a good indicator. This is why he doesn't cover it. Because if he covers it, he has to admit his bias, and he's going to say unpopular things like, oh yeah, I really doubt everything we know about the Israeli military, they wouldn't target civilians because it's a waste and it's just not how they operate. But actually the other groups do. And as we've seen recently, Hezbollah and Iran have only been targeting military targets in Israel, which goes against the rhetoric we're seeing here. And he's basically using, you know, the October 7th attack to paint this picture that all these groups only target civilians, where what we're seeing now is the Israeli military largely targets civilians in Lebanon and Palestine, and it's the other groups that largely target the military. And that's part of the reason you can explain why the casualties, civilian casualties, are just overwhelming on the Lebanese and Palestinian sides compared to the Israeli side. Again, the insane pro-Israel bias on this guy is clear, so that's why he doesn't talk about this stuff, because this is such a contentious issue now for the Democrats, because so many people are turning against them for their handling of this. He can't really get back now and say, oh yeah, Israel don't target civilians. Like, he can't say that. Even if he wants to say it because of his bias, he can't say that because overwhelming evidence is that they do. So I just wanted to play you all of that to show you how it's so insane that he takes little moments where he feels safe enough to spout this Zionist rhetoric and then goes back to hiding behind anti-Trump coverage. And I'll show you this before getting into the rest of the video. If I just type in his name on YouTube, right, and I search by the last week, here are all the videos I get. Trump supporter grills me, then I convert him. Massive Trump glitch raises medical questions. Red alert, Trump takes lead, poised to become president. Trump takes questions, absolute collapse. Trump lost, confused on stage for 39 minutes while music plays. Why is Trump hiding his medical records? Watch, Biden crushes Trump in mega viral moment. Trump's health guru, RFK Jr., spits out nonsense. The disturbing links between Trump and Stalin and Putin. Electoral map shifts to Trump. So basically, all this guy's coverage is just about Donald Trump, because he pretty much only cares about financial interests at this point, even if he previously might have wanted to say something maybe a bit more interesting about other topics. And let's get into this now. There is not a sponsorship this guy won't do. Now, this came out a long time ago, and it's actually on the Destiny subreddit I found some of the receipts. So he promoted so many really shady crypto and NFT shit. I mean, I'm not going to call them scams because I don't know the ins and outs of all of them, because the videos have literally been removed. But loads of this stuff, not from Pacman, I don't know, like I said, but loads of this stuff that was rife on the internet. Company sponsoring videos were for like crypto pump and dump scams. And someone left all the links to a lot of them, and if you click on them, you're just met with this. If the owner of this video is granting you access, please sign in. So they're clearly privated. Now, even on his own show, it had David Pacman promotes another crypto scam. This time it's some cryptocurrency called Centric. It had an FEC advisory put out against it in 2020. And the comment section and its likes are being astroturfed as hell. Then on the majority report, they have receipts. David Pacman shills another crypto trading scam. David Pacman at it again, shills for shady NFT pyramid scheme. Because, obviously, I'd imagine he could probably even get into legal trouble for promoting a lot of his stuff, like a lot of these influencers do. There's not a lot of evidence about him doing these like crypto sponsorships. There is a weird video he put out which just seems like a normal video. It's called High Savings Rate and Crypto Buyers Bad for the Economy. So he just like, he talks about like a normal video about the US economy, but it's actually an advert for something called BitLevX, which if I click the link, I can't even go on the website, but it's just like a platform for investing in cryptocurrency.
All right, let's talk a little bit about personal finance, I guess, in a sense. Let's talk about the national savings rate as a result of the pandemic and sort of some other related topics, and we'll sort of build up to what some are calling kind of like new asset allocations that make sense for the average person. Nothing in this video is financial advice, just as a reminder. We're just talking about some of these issues. There's a very interesting article in The Atlantic by Robert Shapiro called What the U.S. Loses When Americans Save Too Much. And it points out, accurately, that during the pandemic, Americans socked more away than at any time in recent memory, and that's a problem. The other thing that's sort of going on as all of this is happening, and I don't pretend to know what the impact of it is going to be, is that more and more legacy financial firms, and you can like them or not, you can trust them or not, but a lot of people pay attention to them, are starting to say that the average person could, or even in some cases should, make cryptocurrency a part of their portfolio. JP Morgan, for example, says, they said it months ago, investors could make Bitcoin 1% of portfoilios. And that sort of relates actually to a platform that I've been trying out lately that I'll take a second just to tell you about. The platform is called BitLevX. This video was sponsored by BitLevX. After we reached out to them, we partnered up on this video. They have a really unique product. It's basically options with leverage. I've never really traded options before. I've been wanting to just dip my toe in a little bit, find out how they're priced and so on.
That is super shady that he didn't straight up say at the start of the video it's sponsored. You had to get like halfway through it thinking it was like a news segment, and it was actually an ad, and loads of his audience were calling him out. And then this is so funny. Someone actually calls him out to his face on a call, and I'm actually amazed he's left this up, and he's just sweating so bad. Like, listen to how he reacts to someone confronting him. Like, why do you promote all this fucking shit?
I wanted to ask about what is up with the advertisements on your channel with always involving crypto? Like,
what do you mean always? Like, most of our advertisers have nothing to do with crypto.
You always do these single video advertisements, and they're always sketchy cryptocurrency sort of things.
I think we did one in the last few weeks. Can you give me an example of it being sketchy crypto?
One of them was an NFT thing, which was the most recent one, and the other I don't exactly remember the name of, but it ended up failing because of numerous FEC warnings against it.
In terms of the NFT, so are you talking about a cryptocurrency, or now you're saying an NFT? These are two different things. Which one did you mean?
I was meaning all of them.
Okay, but is this call about the recent NFT one or a cryptocurrency? Because these are I can't address them generally if there's a specific thing.
I guess we can. I guess you could address the recent NFT advertisement, because a lot of people do not approve of you advertising these things.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, listen, we have advertisers. We make clear when things are sponsored or it's an advertiser. I can't think of any advertiser that I've not had people complain about. When we have, a cereal company, people write in saying the cereal is expensive and not very good and you really shouldn't be associated with them. Advertisers, we mark things as advertisements. We allow people to make decisions about any advertiser that they want, and there's no way everybody will be happy with every advertiser. That's for sure.
So that's so funny how he just tries to get around that guy asking questions. Because if the guy just said, yeah, you're shilling cryptocurrency and NFTs, what do you have to say about that? Like, your audience don't like it. He could just give a straight answer to that. But instead he's like, which one? What are you talking about? They're different things. And then saying that promoting cryptocurrency is the same as promoting cereal, which is so funny because, yeah, people could disagree with the ethics of maybe how that cereal was made or the company or something like that. But if you are sponsored by cereal and I use your link to buy cereal, I'm still getting cereal. If you're sponsored by crypto scams and I put my money into the crypto scam, I'm losing my money. Pretty much guaranteed, because that's what the whole crypto market is basically built on, including all the weird stuff he's promoted, right? So that's so funny how he defends himself from this stuff. But it's clear he just epitomizes liberal grifter. Make 1 million videos about Donald Trump and do any single sponsorship that comes your way. And if someone confronts you about the shadier ones, just say shit like this to them. No one's ever going to be happy with all our sponsors, but we try and be careful or whatever. Again, purely done for financial profit, but I do find it funny how the one thing he's been consistent on is being like really pro-Israel, and sometimes he can't help himself. But again, notice how he never covers Israel. He says all that shit in October when he feels it's safe because he feels like the climate is, oh my God, everyone is anti-Palestinian right now. Based on what Hamas have done. Therefore, I can say all this stuff, how it's their fault they didn't accept this deal in the 40s, it's their fault for all these wars, it's their fault for never accepting the Israeli occupation. I can say that because I'm safe, and loads of Democrats and their supporters all support Israel at this moment. But as time goes on and the whole climate turns against Israel, then he keeps backing down. And the only time he covers it is when people ring in on Discord to confront him, where he maybe will say the same shit, knowing that that video will be completely drowned out by all the anti-Trump spam he's putting up. Talking about anti-Trump spam, let's talk about someone who on the surface is less gross to me because he's not promoting like every single cryptocurrency. He's not saying terrible things, in my opinion, about Israel and Palestine, but he is some anti-Trump spammer, like saying absolutely nothing, saying nothing interesting. But what's interesting about Brian Tyler Cohen is he seems to be deeply in bed with the Biden White House. And there's a couple of Gen Z influencers, you might have seen them on Twitter, and it got leaked that they're being paid by the DNC. I'm not saying I know this is a fact. I just find this guy super suspicious, and I wouldn't be surprised, don't know anything if this is true or not, I wouldn't be surprised if he was also on the payroll. And I say that like being paid for sponsored posts, being paid for interviewing certain guests from the Biden White House, because he is insanely well connected to the people in that administration. Like, he's interviewed so many of them on his podcast. He's interviewed Kamala Harris. He's interviewed Joe Biden. He's interviewed all these people. And why I hate his content is because it's shit. Like, it's well produced and he's reading from a script, so it like flies by, it's coherent and shit like that. But he says nothing interesting, and also shames people who have any concerns about voting for Joe Biden. But what is interesting as well, he hasn't actually said anything really about Israel either. Again, very telling he avoids that topic, which is so damning on the Biden White House. But he did defend Rashida Tlaib from being called an anti-Semite back in 2019. But at the same time, he really hasn't said anything, and he also changed one of the titles of his videos. So I found it on another place where it said, Trump attacks Israel in stunning speech, and he changed it to Trump screws his campaign with stunning admission, where he just talked about how Biden is more pro-Israel than Trump, and that's a good thing. But like I said, Brian Tyler Cohen is basically an unofficial spokesperson for the Biden White House. So not only does he absolutely spam anti-Trump content, which does insanely well. Like, this guy must be actually pretty wealthy at this point. So if I type in just his name onto YouTube, again, sort by 1 week, look at this. Like 400k views in 9 hours, which is actually more, because that's like a live count. How insane is that? And then before 2 hours, Trump, nearly 200k in 2 hours after putting out a video from 10 hours ago, and he has 400k. Like, this guy must be rolling in it. Trump makes devastating mistakes, screws his own party. Trump gets what he deserves, hit with legal notice. Trump gets brutal surprise. Breaking, Fox host endorses Kamala Harris with a picture of Trump on the screen. Trump rally ends as Trump has bizarre episode on stage, 1 million views. Trump crashes and burns as rally instantly takes awkward turn. Pro-Trump Georgia election board pulls insane stunt. Trump squanders final campaign stretch, which was brutal something. Obama humiliates Trump on stage. These views are absolutely fucking insane and so close together. And I actually, because I watch his videos, I'm being spammed with all this stuff now. Like, it just takes over your algorithm, and he is basically like a content farm of anti-Trump content. And guess what? There is nothing interesting to be said when you talk about Trump 24/7. Like, what interesting points can you make at Trump at this point? Like, what interesting criticism, what interesting things? Yeah, we know he's a fascist, we know he's dumb, we know he's unhinged. So what? Like, who cares at this point? Yeah, he's bad. Democrats, like, run good candidates and have good policies, and you won't lose to him, because you're going to lose to him at this point. And what's so annoying is, in secret, people like Brian Tyler Cohen and David Pakman are rubbing their hands together at the thought of another Trump presidency, because that content is going to do even better. You're in opposition now to demonize him. What would they do without Donald Trump? They just wouldn't have this cash cow. Again, as the unofficial spokesperson of the Biden White House, he's of course like supported Biden's stances on Israel and stuff like that, although not really vocally, because this guy seems to completely avoid that issue, which makes sense if you're like actually working for the Biden White House. You don't want to draw attention to that, just draw attention to all the good stuff. But this is actually so funny. If you want to see how absolutely bought this guy is, right? So obviously Donald Trump versus Joe Biden in that debate was probably the biggest debate win for any presidential candidate in a debate. Like, Joe Biden did so badly, he dropped out of the race. Like, that is how bad he did. And it was so obvious that even hardline loyalists to Joe Biden in the Democratic Party forced him out. Nancy Pelosi said recently, Biden still hasn't spoke to her after she came out saying he had to step down. That's how bad it was. But, you know all the stereotypes of North Korea where they're like, you know, the press tell you all this stuff about Kim Jong-un and it's all fake and it's so embarrassing. listen to how Brian Tyler Cohen covered the debate with Trump, which was like an unmitigated disaster and a terrible night for Joe Biden. So much so, all the comments are actually saying it was terrible for Biden, but it doesn't match with the content what you're watching. So let's listen to Brian break down the debate for us, and let's see how he feels about it.
Here, Donald Trump is desperately backpedaling from the fact that he called veterans suckers and losers. And of course, Trump claimed that 19 people said he didn't say that. But everybody knows that Trump can find sycophants who will say what he wants them to say. The more important point is the fact that General John Kelly confirmed that Trump did say it. So Trump can point to the Stephen Millers of the world until he's blue in the face to lie on his behalf. But John Kelly has nothing to gain by lying about what Donald Trump said. And for a guy for whom the closest thing to military service was calling avoiding getting an STD his own personal Vietnam, it's not exactly far-fetched to recognize that Kelly was telling the truth. There you have it. Donald Trump says not to worry about his age because he aced a test intended to detect dementia, and also that he won 2 golf club championships at his own golf courses. I'm not sure what to say about that, but hey, congrats on handing yourself a golf trophy. And look, let's take a step back here. Did Biden have more difficulty in this debate? Yes, but that's a question of style. Biden was not polished, he stuttered, and yes, he is old. But I would take that any day of the week over Donald Trump, a criminal, a liar, a con man, and an avowed dictator. Trump is a threat to democracy. Biden is not perfect, and Donald Trump is a skilled liar. He practices every day of his life. I am less concerned about style than I am about results, and the results speak for themselves. The U.S. is the strongest it's ever been under Biden, and the world is safer under Biden. That's what's on the ballot in November. That's what will drive my vote. And if you care about the future of democracy, the foundation on which every single issue is based, then that will drive your vote as well.
So it probably won't surprise you that when I looked up this guy, apparently he used to be an actor, because, yeah, like, can you imagine watching that debate and then going out and just saying, like, yeah, it's just his style. His style. Biden just didn't even seem like he knew where he was in that debate, and it was like literally, it was hard to watch. It was hard to watch. As someone whose granddad had Parkinson's and stuff, and you know, older people declining, it just looked like them being thrown off the stage and being asked to debate like really complex political issues. But that's the thing. Biden did terribly. He was polling so badly that his own party kicked him out. This guy would have gone down with the ship. He would have kept telling you that Joe Biden is the best candidate, he's the most progressive president ever, I've heard him say in other videos, and he would have kept making this absolute garbage content to convince you that actually everything's okay. Like, that is why it's so insane. He acts like everything is actually just fine, and you must stop Donald Trump. Joe Biden's not perfect. And also what I find funny is these liberals, they think you can analyze a debate like that, right? And you can just say, oh, Trump is wrong, like on the facts. Trump is wrong. That doesn't matter in a debate. That really doesn't matter. Like, who is going to go research this stuff afterwards? A debate is all about vibes. And you've heard that famous thing about Richard Nixon versus JFK. People who watched it said JFK won. People who listened said Richard Nixon won, right? That is what you're dealing with in a debate. It's about changing people's mind, and sadly, a lot of it is all about show, especially when you've got 2 old people who are so incoherent and talking absolute nonsense to each other. It is just about vibes. Not that I think usually political debates even matter, and lots of times presidential debates don't actually change anything. But this has to be one of the few times in history where this presidential debate actually altered the course of history, and this guy was acting like it actually wasn't really a big deal for Joe Biden, even though he had to drop out afterwards. Now, he also made a video claiming to be a progressive and how Biden wasn't perfect, even though, you know, don't get the sense from any of this guy's videos that he doesn't think Biden is perfect. And he talks about why you should vote for Joe Biden, right? Obviously, this is, of course, before Joe Biden dropped out, but I just found his logic interesting.
Today we're going to settle the issue of those on the left looking to punish Joe Biden at the ballot box. So there's been a lot of commentary, mostly from young people and progressives, about how they're not going to vote for Joe Biden because they don't believe that he earned their vote, mostly as a result of Israel, Gaza, or inflation or housing. The reasons differ, but generally fall into that category. This election is not about punishing Joe Biden. This election is about us and the future that we want. Joe Biden is the better vehicle to get me there. And look, this is not to carry water for the things he did that you may be unhappy with. I absolutely understand and appreciate that people are vehemently unhappy with Israel, with Gaza, with inflation. I am by no means here trying to claim that Joe Biden is perfect, because he's not. But here's the thing, they're never gonna be perfect. I've never seen a politician in my entire life whose views align with mine on every issue, and that's okay. That's how it is. That's how it goes. You've heard the saying, voting isn't marriage, it's public transport. You're not waiting for the one, you're getting the bus. And if there isn't one to your destination, you don't not travel, you take the one getting you closest to where you want to be. If I were to say, I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden because he wasn't perfect on every issue, that would be me sacrificing my future. And using my vote to punish Joe Biden is not more important than using my vote to protect my future. Look, I think that progressives, of which I absolutely consider myself, play a really important role in politics, especially right now. I think we need to push Biden to the left. And by the way, we have. Biden is the most progressive president of our lifetimes. That wouldn't have happened without progressives pushing him and without a president who is willing to be pushed, if not on everything, at least on a lot. But if the end result is that progressives abandon Biden because they didn't get everything, well, then there's not going to be a whole lot of incentive for any president to listen to progressives in the future if they know that they demand 100% absolute purity and nothing less. If we want Democratic politicians to continue governing in a way that is progressive, they need to know that we're a reliable bloc, not a fickle one. That's how we lose power. We should be doing everything we can to gain it. So if you hear these arguments from people who've soured on Biden, I think the move here is to remind them that it's going to be their country for a whole lot longer than it's going to be Biden's.
So watching that, you might think what he's saying is actually pretty reasonable. And why I'm actually even playing that is because you hear the exact same arguments with Kamala Harris. And why this is so insane to me is someone who doesn't really give a shit about elections anymore when you realise, like, capitalist democracy isn't a democracy. Like, it doesn't really fucking matter who the UK Prime Minister is or the US President is. It's pretty much a continuation rather than any sort of deviation. What's so insane about what he's saying there is basically like, just shut up and accept it. And him saying he's progressive is such a fucking lie, by the way. It's just trying to make other people who are more left-leaning listen to him. Like saying that Joe Biden is like the most progressive president we've had, and saying that you have to show the Democrats that you're a loyal bloc who will vote for the candidate no matter what he does, including the most terrible crimes against humanity. And I love the way how he just like completely just goes through that. Like, oh yeah, like you might not agree with how he's handling Israel and Gaza, but it's not like a marriage. It's like getting the bus. And what I find funny is that isn't like electoral politics, isn't it about like getting concessions from a candidate? I don't know any real leftists I've seen who said they won't vote for Kamala Harris and they wouldn't vote for Joe Biden, who have said, I need him to be perfect on every single thing. Do you know what most of them have said? They've said, at this election, I'm basically a single issue voter, and that issue is an arms embargo on Israel at the very least, which makes total sense. And if most leftists had that line of, I will vote for Kamala Harris if she actually gets Biden to do an arms embargo or really promises that she'll do it day one, then I should get my vote, right? And when it's so important to get those voters, this election especially, who are dissatisfied with how Biden and Harris have handled this stuff, that seems like a very clear thing, like, politicians can latch onto. But then you have people like this, and this is what my problem is with these people at the end of the day, saying, no, don't cause a fuss, don't demand concessions, don't do any of those things. Show the Democratic Party as a left-wing person you'll be loyal to them, and you'll vote for them no matter what they do. That's basically what he's telling you. He's like, if you're annoyed about the Israel stuff, I get it. Make sure you vote for Biden anyway. And what they're trying to do is normalize just basically politicians not doing anything for you. And like I said, I don't think most people want Biden to be perfect or wanted Kamala Harris to be perfect. A lot of people were excited when she replaced Biden because they thought maybe she could be pushed left. But it's pretty clear these people aren't going to be pushed left on most issues. Like, listen to their campaigns, they're absolute neoliberal right-wing garbage, which is far more right-wing than 2016, by the way. There is no talk of healthcare. There's no talk of universal healthcare anymore. That was a big issue when Bernie Sanders was running. And there's basically no talk about stopping Israel either. But if it was up to people like this, you just shut up and vote because, yeah, Trump is bad. And that's the annoying thing. They brainwash people into thinking like Trump is this existential threat to US democracy. Him as a singular person is the threat to US democracy. It's not the whole US system that is fundamentally undemocratic and can be exploited by people like Trump or the Republicans or the Democrats. No, it is just bad man Emperor Palpatine Voldemort, and if we defeat him at this election, we'll be good. Not that the next election will be the exact same thing, where Kamala Harris will be a very unpopular president and she'll be running against like Ron DeSantis, and they'll say the exact same stuff. Oh my God, worst person ever. He's going to destroy democracy. Therefore, I know you might not like how she's handled certain things, but you're going to vote for her anyway, aren't you? Like, show the Democrats you're a good progressive who'll just vote for them because the other guy is worse every single time. I actually told people not to vote for Joe Biden in 2020. I said this exact thing. Every single election, they're going to get worse and worse and worse in offering you stuff and promising to do stuff for you. And they're just going to say the other guy is a threat and we must get rid of him. And they're going to continue to do this. Like, where is this going to end? At this point, I do not blame any person in America for not voting for Kamala Harris. If you vote for the Democrats this time, and especially because she isn't promising to change things on Gaza and Lebanon or anything to do with Israel, if you vote for them, you are telling them they can do anything and you will vote for them. Like, they can do crimes against humanity that we haven't seen this century, and you will vote for them anyway. And they won't even bother to promise anything to you to get your vote in the first place, and they're promising even less every single time. And like I said, if Kamala Harris actually does win, do you think they're not going to do the same strategy at the next election when it's JD Vance or Ron DeSantis promising like terrible things for the country? Of course they're going to do it. So this is how these people take like anti-conservative energy or take like sentiment of people who are angry with the system and divert it into something that supports the status quo. This guy is a mouthpiece for the Biden White House, and he's a mouthpiece for the status quo. If you listen to him, you're only getting the status quo voice, and if you're influenced by him, you'll only ever vote for the status quo and against your own interest, and you'll only ever advocate for a system that fundamentally is against you. That's why these people are frustrated, because they're so popular, and plenty of people who either are left-leaning or could be influenced into being more left-wing, they watch shit like this and get deranged by this anti-Trump stuff, so they just become a blue MAGA cult who think people like me or any leftist in America who doesn't vote for Kamala Harris, they actually are the reason the country fell to Trump. If Trump gets in, it's actually left-wing people whose fault for not voting, not Kamala Harris and the terrible Democrats not promising anything to get left-wing people to vote for them in the first place, which seems to be like one of the fundamental basics of running an election campaign is, yeah, if you want people to vote for you and different groups voting for you, you promise them stuff that will get them to vote for you. Like, it's the most basic shit ever. But according to people like this, it's actually no, like, just ignore all of that and just vote for them anyway. So at the end of the day, these people fundamentally do it for clout and profit, and yeah, you shouldn't trust anything they say, and sometimes they'll let the mask slip and go on a rant about how it's Palestinians' fault for their own oppression, but other than that, it's just Trump bad, Trump bad, Trump bad, Trump bad, every single day, racking up millions and millions of pounds, like, I'd say every month probably. Like, these channels are probably insanely profitable. So that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching.
Let's talk about Yahya Sinwar. Yahya Sinwar became the Politburo chief of Hamas, was already the leader of the military wing of Hamas, and is seen as the person who was most responsible for, I don't want to use the term masterminding, because I feel like a lot of people are going to say, oh, you're being anti-Semitic or whatever what's a better word than that? Coordinating the October 7 attacks. So there's the raw footage of Yahya Sinwar's last moments. This doesn't actually show any blood or anything, but Israel, weirdly enough, presented this, I think, because they thought, like, look how sick this is. Like, we killed him. He died. He's a loser. But the reality of the matter is that I think this will probably... I think this is like something that will backfire, considering that it completely contradicts a lot of the messaging surrounding Yahya Sinwar and the way that he was presented to be like surrounded by 20 hostages that he's handcuffed to, and that he was in a tunnel structure always, like consistently hiding. And that's not the case at all. His arm is severed in the video. Yeah, his arm was shot off, I believe, by like the first artillery shell. Overall, the way that this played out is that they didn't even know that they actually ended up targeting and killing Yahya Sinwar. They thought that they were just targeting and killing random Palestinians. Basically, they see three people that they think are suspicious. Those three people scatter. There's like a firefight. One of them runs into this building. The building is shelled. But I guess I'll give you more details on his background after we talk about like the details surrounding the death of Yahya Sinwar.
The top of any notional Israeli target list. A former internal enforcer, a former prisoner in Israel since 2017, the head of Hamas in Gaza.
Why would we be in the front lines, though? Does Hamas lack men now? I think that is one way to interpret the situation. And yes, Hamas's ranks have obviously been diminished in the last 12 months of a genocide. But I think the other reason is that the other reason why he was in the front lines is because, one, all of Gaza is a front line, and two, at least in terms of how he's always operated, he is not exactly a shy person. There are a lot of instances, I think, like where he's openly called for Israel to try and drone strike him as he like walked freely in the streets. But this is before October 7. I'm talking about. He wasn't similar to the usual Politburo chiefs and the way that they are presented to mainstream media, like other Palestinian leadership that was oftentimes maybe even seen at odds with the immediate interests of Palestinians, that they are like wealthy, they live in Doha, they're far removed from the consequences of like Israel's violent actions, even though they are making these decisions, right? He, on the other hand, was always amongst the population. I will, of course, bring up Hind Hassan's interview with him, which I have literally watched before. Hind Hassan said, "This was my interview with Lama Al-Arian, documentary filmmaker, war reporter, Vice News, and NPR. It's his last ever on-camera interview. Everyone told us he was hiding, as it was just days after an assassination attempt during 11 days of Israeli bombardment in 2021. We found him walking down the street, so we stopped him and asked for an interview. He was not the leader of the Al-Qassam Brigade, for your information. That is Mohammed Daif. He was a political leader who wanted to be more involved militarily. Sorry." It is interesting, though, once again, we'll dive further into the background and into the mentality of Yahya Sinwar. I've read primarily Israeli reporting on him. Like, that's the most access that I have, because he wrote a book. He spent a big chunk of his life, 2 decades in Israeli prison. His primary responsibility for Hamas was to seek out collaborators. So like most of the people that he actually punished or killed were Palestinian before he went to Israeli prison. And in Israeli prison, he basically learned a lot about Israel. One thing that you hear about him is one thing that I've heard so consistently, both from David Remnick and many other people in Israel, is that they always say Yahya Sinwar understood us, as in Israeli society, better than we could ever understand Palestinians. And these are not people who like him, okay? These are not like people who are pro-Yahya Sinwar.
Born in southern Khan Yunis to Palestinian refugee parents, he was 25 at the time of the first Intifada, or uprising, in 1987.
Yeah, he was born in 1962 to a refugee camp, by the way. A refugee camp that still very much exists, by the way, even though Israel basically destroyed it. That gives you a little bit of a better understanding of like the terms and conditions into what the world that Yahya Sinwar came into.
Recruited to the newly formed Hamas, quickly becoming its chief enforcer, punishing, killing Palestinians suspected of collaborating with Israel. In 1989, he was convicted by Israel for the abduction and killing of 2 Israeli soldiers and the murder of 4 Palestinians. He spent 22 years as an Israeli prisoner, even giving interviews in fluent Hebrew. Studying Israeli society, media, politics, the better he had it to attack and undermine them. In 2011, he was one of more than 1,000 Palestinian prisoners released in exchange for the captured Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit. Doctrinaire.
It's interesting because while he was in Israeli prison, he was scheming to figure out a way to do like a hostage negotiation already to potentially like do a prison break, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And He was one of the primary parties in the negotiations process. He was a principal negotiator. Like, he played a role in this hostage swap that occurred with Gilad Shalit.
Long opposed to the Oslo peace process with the aim of eradicating Israel and reclaiming all of Palestine, he established himself as a chief strategist, boosting ties with Iran. In 2015, he was defined by the US government as a specially designated global terrorist. His seniority within Hamas was cemented in 2017 when he became its Gaza chief, changing the power balance in favor of its military wing. The same year, Hamas issued an updated charter suggesting it would accept an interim Palestinian state alongside Israel. Sinwar entering into what some saw as an unspoken arrangement with Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel allowing Qatari funding for Gaza in the hope of containing Hamas and maintaining the division between it and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. But as October the 7th proved, and his speech nearly a year before it suggested, Sinwar was still planning a major attack.
We will come to you, God willing, in a roaring flood. We will come to you with an endless number of rockets.
Wait, when did he say this? 2017?
We will come to you with an endless number of rockets. We will come to you in a flood of soldiers without limit. We will come to you with millions of our nation, tide after tide.
With the Al-Aqsa flood, as he called last year's attack, killing 1,200 Israelis and capturing 200.
2022. It was 2 years ago. Okay.
Sinwar dealt Israel a military wound and a deep psychological wound. But it also brought an unprecedented Israeli response, laying waste to Gaza, killing thousands of civilians and destroying much of Hamas's military capacity and now all of its top-level leadership.
The suspicious figure, the bloodstain, and the shells of Building 42. New details about Sinwar's assassination. Israel confirms the IDF didn't find Sinwar. Sinwar found them. He emerged suddenly in plain view, shot through grenades. IDF troops got wounded and took cover in a building where he continued to throw sticks, rocks, and grenades while the IDF shelled the place from a distance. Then a tank and other troops arrived at the scene. At this point, Sinwar went up the second floor of the building where he was hiding, and a tank fired a shell at him. Sinwar was apparently wounded by the tank fire and lost his hand. After soldiers entered the building, he threw 2 grenades at them and they rolled down the staircase. Soldiers retreated and used the drone to scan the building. Then the drone spotted a masked man with an injured hand. Sinwar saw the drone and threw a piece of wood at it. At this point, the tank fired another shell at him. In terms of this being like a massive W for the Israeli military, of course, this is a very high-profile target for them. This is the architect of October 7. This is the person that is the leader of the Al-Qassam brigades. A lot of people actually were very upset about the Gilad Shalit hostage negotiation and the hostage swap, where 1,000 Palestinians that were imprisoned by the Israeli state were allowed to be released for the return of one singular Gilad Shalit. One of those people was Yahya Sinwar. I've actually listened to, I believe his name is David Remnick, who even read his book and has talked about his background quite a bit.
This, according to the IDF, is the moment a tank fired on the building Sinwar was holed up in.
Hassan, looking back now, don't you think that it was Gaza's misfortune that Sinwar got released, considering the state of Gaza now under his leadership? Well, considering prior to his release that Gaza wasn't exactly looking too great, and even after his release, Gaza isn't looking too great, and that the responsible party for Gaza's demise is always going to be the occupying state, the sovereign state of Israel. No, I don't think that his release, because I don't think that his release plays a role in what Gaza looks like, considering that Israel has historically almost always occupied it and has controlled everyday existence in Gaza. I am not a personal believer that like October 7 is when this history unfolded or history happened, and that there was nothing prior to that. And that's precisely the reason why many people will say that you cannot kill an idea. The people will always yearn for emancipation. Totally normal, totally understandable, totally human position to have. And that's precisely the reason why, for example, Hassan Nasrallah's assassination by Israel has not changed the dynamic with Hezbollah still very much fighting against the Israeli incursion into Lebanon, because it has nothing to do with the leadership unless you personally think that like these guys have the capacity to brainwash, millions of people and are just like mind controlling them somehow into resisting against the state of Israel, and that it's not coming out of a normal, very human place of wanting to not live under the ruthless, cruel, brutal military occupation of a settler colony historically that has dominated them, humiliated them, pushed them into a corner with no other way out. That's the reason why I wanted to look at this Vice coverage from 2021, which is, of course, prescient. Considering the way that, once again, Gaza looks in 2021, far before October 7. And this is one of the last Western interviews that Yahya Sinwar ever gave. But having said that, I think it'll help you develop a deeper understanding of the experiences that Palestinians go through and where it stems from.
And this is the Bizlash brigade of soldiers who killed him, operating in that area on the day.
This changes like not a lot in terms of the way that Israel is behaving either. I disagree with this perspective because October 7th happened, the death toll accelerated. Saying that Sinwar's release was not unfortunate for them seems divided from the reality. Even though it's Israel's doing the atrocities of October 7th, form of resistance could have been viewed as an unfortunate miscalculation. This way out that's being played out now seems worse, especially if things go back to apartheid anyway. I'm not Palestinian. I don't live in Gaza. I can't speak on, I guess, like the broader analysis beyond the fact that I don't feel comfortable placing the blame of a violent settler colony that has killed and displaced tens of millions of Palestinians. I don't feel like it's appropriate to lay the blame in the hands of anyone that is resisting against their own brutal occupation. Like, you can't. It's like saying the Warsaw Ghetto uprising is responsible for the Holocaust. That's a ridiculous argument to make. It's not a correct argument to make. It is it's antithetical to everything I believe, especially because you're hyper-focusing, you're hyper-focusing on a singular person and not the broader concept of humiliating and destroying the lives of millions of people. And I think that you can't have that opinion unless you legitimately think it was this singular person that like mind controlled people into acting this way. No, I think that it is a understandable position that people will have when their lives have been ruthlessly dominated by this settler colony. But let's continue.
Along with Sinwar's brother Mohammed, Khalil al-Hayya is a candidate for the next leader of Hamas. Today, thought to be in Qatar, eulogized Sinwar and ruled out an imminent release of hostages in Gaza. 101 hostages are still being held in Gaza, at least half of them thought to be still alive. Their friends and family took to the streets of Tel Aviv again today.
Here in Israel, we don't celebrate the elimination of our enemies. We celebrate when our loved ones come back home.
At Hostages Square, we met the cousin of Carmel Gat. The occupational therapist was one of the group of 6.
By the way, this video fights the entire Israeli project in Gaza. They can use a drone to go into a building and easily find one quote-unquote terrorist. And why the fuck are they dropping 2,000 bombs all over the place? Well, the thing is, they literally lucked into finding him, too. They didn't even kill him as, like, the high-profile target. I think it also further demonstrates the incompetence, even with the American military's surveillance tools at their disposal.
6 hostages murdered in Gaza's tunnels back in August. DNA found at the scene indicated that Sinwar had also been in the area, possibly using Carmel and the others as human shields.
Some people...
Oh my God, come on, dog. Like, bro, they killed him alone. Like, they killed him alone. And they're like, but he might have actually had hostages with him. It's like, dude, you can't fucking package this up as a human shield narrative when, like, the fucking drone footage contradicts that. What the fuck do you mean? That's crazy. There were no human shields there, but I'm going to imagine them being there anyway is a wild assessment to make. But I think it goes to show like the attitude that a lot of people have about this stuff. They're just like, They would rather hallucinate a different reality than the one that they are even presenting to you immediately.
And the government in Israel wants to go on fighting forever and to keep on fighting, even though we eliminated Sinwar, even though we have a chance to get the hostages back. We need to focus on what's important, and most of the Israelis think exactly what I think. They think that the most important thing is the hostages, and if we miss
I don't fully agree with that. I don't think most of the Israelis, I mean, a lot of Israelis do want the hostages back, but I wouldn't say that most of the Israelis are not celebrating Yahya Sinwar's death. Like, I don't agree with that. Most of Israeli society was like basically packed up when Netanyahu threw a bone to the Lebanon invasion camp. Like, they literally stopped the hostage conversations that were getting really heated inside of Israel. If you remember, like, I don't think this person is a bad person, for the record. Like, especially in comparison to you know, how some in the Israeli society view this entire situation. I think it's a little bit naive on the other hand, especially when you see this kind of all the time. While celebrating the death of Yahya Sinwar, Israelis at Mahana Yehuda market in Jerusalem sing the new unofficial Israeli anthem, May Your Village Burn. And meanwhile, he might be naive, but let me tell you something. There are plenty of overtly idiotic people, especially in American media, that immediately went, oh, well, Yahya Sinwar is dead. Now, I guess, like, Israel can finally do a ceasefire. And it's like, no, dog, they haven't stopped bombing Gaza. So what happened? Surely they'll stop any moment now. Is only a position you can arrive at if you are the dumbest truth of all time.
Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Sinwar's death doesn't mean the end of the war in Gaza.
Oh, never mind. Okay, well, there you have it. Let's pack this up, guys. Never mind.
Hamas now confirms that their chief is dead. But a top negotiator for the group says hostages won't be returned until the war ends, Israel withdraws, and the Palestinian prisoners are released. Israel also warns that the war is not over.
Today, evil has suffered a heavy blow, but the task before us is not yet complete. Hamas will no longer rule Gaza. This is the beginning of the day after Hamas.
You see, we're not done murdering every single living Palestinian in Gaza yet. We can't end the war. Sorry, folks.
I think we should start inside Gaza this hour. What's been the reaction there to the official confirmation by Hamas that Yahya Sinwar, the political and military head of that group, has been killed?
Let me begin with a little bit of context.
I was like, you think we're done? I don't think you know what a genocide is.
It's important to remember that Hamas is not an elected government. There have been no elections in Gaza since 2006. That means Palestinians simply do not get a say in who rules them, including, of course, Yahya Sinwar, a very controversial figure, one who really struck fear in the hearts of many Gazans because of his reputation of taking out any potential enemies. Of course, he has supporters, but at a time like this, even critics of Yahya Sinwar are focused on the one major enemy, as Gazans see it, and that is Israel. You are now more than a year into this conflict. At least 42,000 people killed, nearly every single person displaced by this near constant bombardment, and a ground incursion that continues, famine spreading, illness spreading, disease spreading throughout the Gaza Strip. So absolutely for Gazans, their focus is the conflict with the Israeli military, and for them the priority is not what are the political happenings within Hamas or who Israel kills, but quite simply just surviving, Becky, day by day. That is.
Yeah, y'all are so primed to fucking yell at everybody on CNN that you're not hearing what she's saying. She's not wrong. She's 100% correct. She's like, nobody gives a fuck about Yahya Sinwar. Even the people that would not exactly be big fans of him are like, yeah, you know who the greater enemy is? The people that have blown up my house and told me to relocate 8 times and killed half of my goddamn family.
Thank you very much indeed. I want to move on to Gideon Levy now, who joins us. He's a columnist with Haaretz newspaper and served as advisor.
What is going on CNN, man? God damn. In the wake of Yahya Sinwar's death, they got Gideon on? That's wild. They got my goat on. That's crazy.
Dude, you can only cover up the horror for so long. Truth has to come out.
Easy.
To the former Israeli Prime Minister Shimon Peres, it's good to have you, sir. I've just been discussing with Salma what happens, you know, what's been the response in Gaza to the news, some 24 hours ago, that Sinwar indeed had been killed by the IDF, and indeed what happens next. What's your assessment, sir?
So first of all, I'm under the impression, if I can be emotional for a moment, I just spoke now with a friend in Gaza that I didn't speak the whole year, and I was sure he was dead, and he's alive. And he told me that there was...
Yeah, he's bringing that up because he's saying Yahya is not the guy. He's like, make no mistake, my friend that I'm talking about in Gaza wasn't Yahya Sinwar. I know that you might have thought that that's what I was mentioning, but it's not him.
It was quite a sense of happiness last night. He's in one of those rescue places in the MWIII, in those tents facilities, and he says there was quite a sense of happiness last night hearing that Sinwar was assassinated, which doesn't mean that all the Palestinians share the same, but there are people in Gaza who were happy last night.
The reason why people are celebrating, or at least his assessment is that people are celebrating, it's because they also, in many instances, perhaps with a little bit of naivete, think that Israel is going to stop.
Yeah, and that sentiment we have heard reflected from those that are Gazan freelancers and staff.
That's why he said it's not that these guys all hate him, it's that they think it's going to end the suffering.
Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has made a specific offer to members of Hamas, saying that he will let them live if they wave the white flag and they surrender the hostages they may be holding at this stage. Again, the problem, or part of the problem, is that so far Hamas are not giving any indication that they're willing to sort of play along. There's been a statement from a...
Yeah, who? There's like one guy left, and he's in Doha. What do you mean? And the other guy that was also in Doha was assassinated in Tehran by Israel. Dude, one of the most dangerous jobs in the world is not being American president. It's being the principal negotiator with Israel on the Palestinian side in a hostage negotiation, even if you've never held up a gun ever in your life. Here's what Kamala Harris had to say about Yahya Sinwar.
Today, Israel confirmed that Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, is dead, and justice has been served.
As the California Attorney General of a border state, I prosecuted transnational gangs, and Hamas is perhaps the biggest transnational gang of all, shipping fentanyl over the U.S. border. She's like, oh no, I f***ed up my talking points. I meant something different. I meant I love my small businesses. My mother was a small business, and Yahya Sinwar is a small business owner.
A terrorist attack that triggered a devastating war in Gaza, a war that has led to unconscionable suffering of many innocent...
Yeah. He's the reason why Israel did a genocide, which we will not call a genocide. I mean, he was the reason. Hamas is the reason why Israel in 1948 did the Nakba, because they knew that Hamas was coming. They're time travelers. Anyone that acts like this is about Hamas, and Hamas is not simply used as a justification for whatever actions Israel wants to take, death and destruction in Gaza, is the funniest simpleton of all time. Every single Palestinian is quote-unquote Hamas, both literally and figuratively. Every single Palestinian that doesn't want to exist under a brutal Israeli apartheid occupation that is currently conducting genocide is technically Hamas in the sense that they are, exhibiting the worst qualities of Hamas, which is not wanting to live under Israeli sovereignty. That's the part that actually is frustrating to Israel. I'll give you an example. Saudi Arabia. It's not the Islamist fundamentalism that is a problem for Israel. Israel loves Saudi Arabia. So anyone that acts like this is an issue that revolves around like culture or anything like that is an idiot. The reason why Hassan Nasrallah was assassinated by the state of Israel was not because he was a homophobe. It was not because of the militant actions in Syria, like Hezbollah's military operations in Syria at the behest of Iran or whatever, right? It was none of those things. It was because he was the primary figure in Lebanon, leading Hezbollah as a force of resistance against Israeli violence. That's why they killed him. And the reason why a lot of these big bearded dudes are the only game left in town is because Israel killed all of the secular, all of the Marxists, all of the Western focused guys anyway, and still continues to do so. On the night of the Hassan Nasrallah assassination in Lebanon, Israel simultaneously assassinated leaders of the DFLP and PFLP, two groups that had nothing to do with Hezbollah. This is in Lebanon. Okay, these are Palestinians living in Lebanon that are a part of the Marxist groups, the Marxist parties in Palestine. They executed them in that same operation. Why? They weren't in charge of the Hezbollah missile strikes. I thought the operation was supposed to be limited to stopping Hezbollah's command structure to allow Israelis to go back to northern Israel. Why did they kill the PFLP and DFLP guys? Why did they kill Nassan Kadafini years ago? Why have they so consistently destroyed every single Palestinian leadership? No matter whichever ideology they espouse, no matter whichever religious background that they come from. Why? It's because it has nothing to do with your worldview. It has nothing to do with or anything at all. It's just as long as you are someone who is existing under the brutal military occupation of Israel, as long as you are someone who wants to resist against Israeli violence, Israeli bloodshed, you are an enemy. As long as you don't sit back and die quietly. That's it. Kanafani, sorry. What is Trump's reaction?
What's your reaction to Sinwar's death? Sinwar's death? The leader of Hamas, Sinwar?
My reaction is he was not a good person. That's my reaction. That's sometimes what happens.
You know what's really funny about this? Like, he doesn't even want to give this W to like the Biden or Kamala administration. That's why it's like one of those moments where he's like, it's great that it happened, but also he can't like lean into it too much because then that's like giving credit to his opponent. Blue Jean baby playing in the background. I'm just now finding out about this. You're now telling me this for the first time. What can you say about Yahya Sinwar? He lived an amazing life. You're just now telling me I've just found out.
She just died? Wow. I didn't know that. You're telling me that for the first time. She led an amazing life. What else can you say? She was an amazing woman. Whether you agreed or not, she was an amazing woman who led an amazing life.
Chat, was that real?
Time, not very long ago, when Hamzat Chimaev was being touted as one of the greatest prospects to ever enter MMA. His breakout performances during 2020 led many fans and commentators to predict that we were witnessing the rise of an all-time great, a fighter who had the potential to become a 2 or even 3 division champion. But in the following years, Chimaev's career has failed to pan out in the way we expected. On multiple occasions now, we have seen his career derailed by mysterious illnesses, as well as an apparent lack of professionalism. The man who once won 3 fights in 2 months has now only fought 3 times in over 2 years. Khamzat's unreliability, combined with his sense of entitlement, has also squandered much of the goodwill he built with the fans early in his UFC run. Meanwhile, his close personal friendship with a dictator is a persistent threat to his career. At this point in time, it feels as though Khamzat Chimaev may end up being one of the biggest busts in UFC history. But how exactly did we get here? And is it possible for Chimaev to get back on the right path? Part 1. Down with the sickness. When it comes to understanding the derailment of Khamzat Chimaev's hype train, there are a few issues to consider. Chief among them is his years-long battle with illness. This story actually goes all the way back to 2020, shortly after Chimaev had his impressive 3-fight win streak in 2 months. After knocking out Gerald Meerschaert in 17 seconds, Chimaev was booked against Leon Edwards for a fight at UFC Fight Night 183 on December 19th. Unfortunately, in late November, the Swedish MMA website Kimura.se reported rumors that Chimaev had tested positive for COVID. This was followed a few days later by Leon Edwards also testing positive, and the December 19th fight was called off. On December 22nd, the fight was rebooked for a Fight Island event in Abu Dhabi on January 20th. But then, 8 days later, the fight was off once again. According to a report from MMA Junkie, follow-up x-rays show that Chimaev's lungs had not recovered, and doctors deemed him unfit to train for the Edwards fight. This story was later confirmed by one of Khamzat's managers, Ali Abdelaziz, via ESPN's Brett Okamoto. Further confirmation of the fight's cancellation was provided by Dana White during an interview with The Schmo.
I guess he was having problems with his lungs, Khamzat was, so they told him to take some more time off and not start training until early January.
Chimaev himself would also confirm the story to RT Sport, saying that he had to pull out because of the virus, but he was recovering and would train at home. Possibly hoping that the third time's the charm, the UFC would again attempt to book Chimaev and Edwards against each other, this time for UFC Fight Night 187 on March 13th. For a time, things seemed to be heading in the right direction. When Khamzat was interviewed by Front Kick Online in late January, he claimed to be back to 100%. His lungs were good and his strength and conditioning was great. The positivity was not fated to last very long, though. On February 11th, Khamzat was once again forced to withdraw from the Leon Edwards fight due to lingering effects of COVID. Speaking to ESPN, Dana White would say that Chimaev had issues with his lungs and needed to be put on medication. Quote, "I'm so bummed out. I was excited. That was one of my favorite fights this year. The one thing you have to look at right now is health. Let's make sure this guy is healthy, get him the best care we can, and make sure he makes a full recovery." In spite of what Dana White had to say on the matter, Khamzat's other manager, Majdi Shamas, made the situation seem more dire. In a behind-the-scenes interview with Front Kick MMA, Shamas explained the events that led to the fight being called off again, including multiple ambulance trips and hospitalizations.
He insisted that he wanted to train, and then we tried, and it failed. And it was really bad, I've been in and out of hospital so many times nowadays, like lately, the last weeks, that it's crazy.
According to Shamas, Chimaev had been unable to spar for 2 rounds, and even attempting it left him unable to climb the stairs to get up to his room, so he ended up passing out in the lobby. He was unable to train, even unable to speak, and when he called Shamas from the hospital, he didn't think he was going to make it.
And even when he was in the hospital, he called me when he called me, he thought he was going to die. It was really bad,
Khamzat's then head coach, Andreas Michael, had a slightly different take on the matter, claiming that Chimaev had only suffered bronchitis from the cold weather. Whether this is true or not, I think Shamas hit upon something more important in the video. Khamzat's insistence on training before he was fully recovered had been the factor that caused these repeated problems.
I can't let him train. Who knows? This time he started training. He got lucky. Next time he might not be this lucky,
Sadly, Shamas's comments would become eerily prophetic when only 2 weeks later, Khamzat appeared to announce his sudden retirement through Instagram. The post thanked everyone for their support during his time in the sport, but Hamzat said he thought he was done. Chimaev went on to delete these posts as well as most of the content that was on his Instagram at the time, but the implications were alarming to say the least. No less so because a few weeks prior he had been flown out to Vegas by the UFC to receive treatment for his illness. Regardless of what Chimaev may have said, there were two men who disagreed with this alleged retirement. The first was Dana White. While speaking with MMA Junkie, White stated that Hamzat had experienced an emotional moment because he tried to train while taking prednisone, but he wasn't actually going to retire. Quote, "He's on prednisone, and he's supposed to be taking this thing and chilling and relaxing and letting himself recover. He went in and trained today, felt like shit, and got super emotional and posted that. He's not supposed to be training, but you know, this guy is a savage. He wants to fight like a weekend, and now he can't even train. So he just got emotional and posted that, but he ain't quitting." End quote. The second man to throw his 2 cents into the conversation would be none other than the Chechen dictator himself, Ramzan Kadyrov. In a lengthy post on the Visit Chechnya Tourism Instagram account, Kadyrov stated that he had called Chimaev and convinced him not to retire. I'll talk about Kadyrov in more detail later, but for now, understand that he is a brutal dictator who has committed numerous human rights abuses and has also been credibly linked to attacks on people who are critical of his regime. In that light, certain elements of the post sound a bit more threatening, like saying that he told Hamzat all the Chechen people were upset by this news, and reminding Chimaev that all their young people, whom he inspires, are pinning great hopes on his victory. Regardless of whether or not this post was intended as a threat, Chimaev would soon leave the U.S. and return to Chechnya for treatment. During this time, Hamzat's brother, Artur, spoke to BJPen.com and stated that Hamzat's health scare was due to pushing himself to return to training too soon. There had been points on his right lung that were not fully recovered, and he had been on antibiotics, but chose to train again after only 2 weeks. Artur added that the bad reaction he had to training left Hamzat frightened and depressed, but that he had ultimately decided not to retire. At the time, it seemed as though Chimaev's career was in limbo while he recovered. When speaking to Jim Rome in early March of 2021, Dana White said that he had no idea what was going to happen with Hamzat Chimaev.
I mean, you love guys like this. These are the type of guys that fight fans want to see fight and want to follow and get behind. But trying to contain and control this guy to do the right thing is absolutely impossible. So, to be honest with you, I have no idea what's going to happen with him. I don't know.
Over the following months, and years actually, we would get varying stories about what exactly Hamzat went through during his period of illness and how he recovered. During another interview with RT Sport in late March of 2021, he confirmed that his retirement post was just emotional words due to the stress of dealing with his illness and being unable to train, as well as the fear that it might have been something more serious. Quote, "Like, I have been sick for so long. Why doesn't it go away? Different thoughts were going through my mind. Plus, I was alone there in Las Vegas, struggling to overcome it all." End quote. Chimaev would later reveal in an interview with Brett Okamoto that when he returned to Chechnya, they performed some kind of operation on him.
So when I come back to my country, here also they helped me. I did house surgery. I did operation here. So they took out some stuff like, I don't know how to explain in English. And now I feel much better.
Although Hamzat was unable to properly explain what the operation removed at the time, his manager would later reveal that the doctors had removed a cyst from his neck. Ultimately, Chimaev would admit that his unfortunate circumstance was his own fault, as he lied to his manager and trained when he wasn't supposed to.
My manager, Ali, my brother, he stopped me all the time. No, you can't. But I told him I'm gonna do only pads, but it was lying. I jumped in the grappling sparring. I did 3 rounds. Then I feel bad, like in my chest. Like we did hard sparring with some guy. Like then I go home, I start to blood. They will start to come out.
Looking back on this ordeal during an interview on the Full Send podcast in October of 2023, Chimaev revealed that part of his emotional response at the time was due to a false cancer diagnosis.
That time when I said that, doctor said to me, "Come in there, you have a cancer, man." That's why I'm said I'm retired. I didn't know what to say to my family. I didn't know what to say to the people. Then we check again. The other doctor said, no, you don't have a cancer, and you still coughing blood, and you think, man, you're finished, you know.
In retrospect, I think this puts Hamzat's reaction at this period of time into better perspective. He was 26 years old, in the prime of his life, and feeling invincible after having one of the best early runs in UFC history. Then he gets hit with this illness that he can't shake. He goes from being a juggernaut who allegedly trained 4 times a day to being unable to walk upstairs without ending up in the hospital. To rub salt in the wound, in the midst of all of this, he is misdiagnosed with an even more serious illness. This experience would probably make anyone reevaluate their life and priorities. After spending time in Chechnya, Chimaev would make a recovery, but his struggles with illness have continued to this day. Perhaps even worse than that, it seems as though he hasn't learned from the harsh experience he had during this time. Part 2. The Waiting Game. After recovering from his lengthy health scare, Chimaev faced off against Li Jingliang at UFC 267. The Li fight was completely one-sided, and Chimaev picked up the submission victory in a little over 3 minutes. Following this victory, he was booked against Gilbert Burns at UFC 273 in April of 2022. Hamzat would win the fight by unanimous decision. I'm not going to break down Chimaev versus Burns because I don't believe it's a contentious decision the way some people do. However, it was not the steamrolling we had seen in all of Hamzat's previous UFC fights, and the fact that he got dropped by Burns in a wild exchange proved that he was not superhuman. At this point, it seemed as though Hamzat was back on track. This is where we get to the saga of UFC 279 and Nate Diaz versus Hamzat Chimaev. Now, I've discussed a lot of this in my UFC 279 video, so I'm not going to go over it all again here. But suffice to say, it was a clusterfuck. For the first time in UFC history, the pre-fight press conference was called off due to skirmishes between Chimaev and other fighters. This was only the beginning of the problems, though. On the day of the weigh-ins, Chimaev weighed in at 178.5 pounds, 7.5 pounds over the weight limit for a non-title fight. Initially, Hamzat treated the weight miss as a joke, shrugging and saying he was close enough, then later blaming Darren Till on Twitter for the unfortunate mishap, something he continues to do to this day. When Hamzat came in overweight, Nate Diaz refused to fight him, and much of the card had to be reordered in unprecedented fashion. In the end, Chimaev was set to fight Kevin Holland in a 180-pound catchweight fight. The real reason Hamzat missed weight for this fight is still unclear, even 2 years later. At first, we heard reports of a medical issue of some kind from Ariel Helwani. This post was somewhat contradicted by a post from the MMA fan Mini Habib, stating that she saw Hamzat at a restaurant eating and drinking for hours the night before the weigh-ins. While talking to ESPN, Dana White said that Chimaev started locking up and cramping while cutting weight. Hamzat seemed to confirm this during a segment with Megan O'Leary, where he said that a doctor told him to stop cutting weight at around 4 in the morning of weigh-in day.
That was like 4 o'clock at night, so I had a lot of time, so they didn't let me know. So I said, okay, so what?
English isn't Hamzat's first, second, or even third language, so sometimes it can be a bit difficult to parse out exactly what he means. I give him a bit of a pass for being somewhat ambiguous with what he's saying. On the other hand, he left nothing up to interpretation at the ceremonial weigh-ins when he flipped off the crowd who was booing him. Even after this fight, which saw Hamzat mop the floor with Holland in short order, he kept getting strange and conflicting stories about why he missed weight. During an appearance on the MMA Hour, Hamzat's then coach Andreas Michael said that Hamzat had experienced medical issues during the cut that led to the UFC doctor examining Chimaev and advising that they should stop the cut. Among the symptoms Hamzat experienced were muscle spasms, shaking, vomiting, and passing out. Following the doctor's advice, Michael made the decision to call it off.
I said to him, the doctor told you can't continue, and I'm going to stop the weight cutting.
That said, Andreas would also place the blame for the failed cut on the lingering effects of Chimaev's illness, stating that since he went through it, Hamzat has not been able to push his body to the limit like he once was.
Ever since he got corona, I had a little bit of a hard time making the weight. When it comes down to like pushing it to the last leg,
draw.
Adding to some of the confusion, Dana White stated that Khamzat had at first come in on weight, and when he landed in Vegas, he was lighter than he had been in previous fights. Where this gets even more strange is that a year later, in the lead-up to his fight at UFC 294, Khamzat would make some vague claims about there being plans for him to miss weight.
Everyone speak about I didn't make weight, once in my life. And there was some plans to do that way. It's not my plans, but I can't say everything here. And
It's a bit hard to know what to make of this. I don't think Khamzat is saying that there was a conspiracy for him to miss weight and change the fights up, because that would have been a massive, unnecessary headache for the UFC. Not to mention, I don't think any of the fighters would have been able to stay quiet about that to save their lives. I think Khamzat was probably just saying some vague bullshit to deflect from his personal responsibility in the matter. Either way, Khamzat's failure to make weight at UFC 279 cast a cloud of doubt over his career that lasted for months. Over 6 months later, in May of 2023, Dana White claimed to Aaron Bronstetter that Chimaev's personal life was delaying his return.
That's on him, though. He's got stuff going on in his personal life. That's not because we're not going to fight. Obviously, you know how it goes here. I talk about this all the time. We have to get guys 3 fights a year. So if we don't get guys 3 fights a year, we have to pay them. So the only way that wouldn't happen is if they have personal stuff.
Can you fight on US right now?
Sure.
So there's no issue there in terms of hurdles.
Khamzat refuted this claim on Twitter by saying that he had no problems with fights, and if they offered him a fight, he would have taken it. But he had been doing many training camps without a fight. Given what we know about Khamzat burning himself out by training too much, that seems pretty stupid, but that's just the way fighters are. Around this time, Chimaev had also apparently put on a lot of weight. In a Twitter call-out of Paulo Costa, he posted an image of a scale reading 98.5 kilograms, or about 217 pounds. Khamzat would eventually get the fight with Costa booked for UFC 294, but Costa pulled out and was replaced by Kamaru Usman on 10 days' notice. Chimaev versus Usman is a somewhat difficult fight for me to analyze, given the circumstances. Everyone agrees Chimaev won round 1, and some think he won at 10-8. I don't think that is unreasonable. Similarly, it is almost universally agreed upon that Usman won round 2. Again, I can't say I disagree, but it was a fairly close round, with Khamzat getting a takedown late and not doing much with it. Round 3 is something of the controversial round, but I think Kamaru won it as well. He landed nearly twice as many significant strikes as Chimaev. Khamzat did get a takedown and spent 2 minutes on top, but it was very uneventful. Khamzat probably still deserved to win the fight, given how dominant the first round was, but I don't think scoring it as a draw is wrong either. That said, the scorecards aren't really as interesting to me as what happened over the course of the fight. Usman was making up the difference as the rounds progressed. By the end of the third, I thought he was getting the better of Khamzat. He was landing more strikes and making Chimaev flop to the ground for takedowns. Had this fight gone into the championship rounds, I think Usman could have won. Kamaru is obviously one of the best to ever do it, but Chimaev still got dragged from a 10-8 round into a relatively competitive fight by a 36-year-old coming off of 2 losses and coming up in weight on short notice. Yet he still stuffed 2/3 of Chimaev's takedowns, which is far and away better than anyone else has done. As I said earlier, it's hard to draw too many conclusions from this fight, but I will say one thing. There are still big questions about Khamzat's cardio that were not answered. He can front-load a lot of offense, but if you can avoid that early onslaught, I think he becomes significantly more beatable. Part 3. Revenge of the Sick. Despite briefly getting back on track, it wouldn't take long for Khamzat's career and health to once again become imperiled. In early January of 2024, Chimaev posted a collage to Twitter featuring multiple images of him in the hospital, hooked up to an oxygen mask, as well as a large image where he appears very bloated and has some strange blotchy coloration to his skin. In the caption, Khamzat said that he had been very sick, adding that he wanted to see himself in battle more than all of the fans do. Shortly afterward, he deleted this message, and from what I've read, he posted some other tweets where he looked more healthy, but I think they've been deleted as well. This was about all we would hear of this mystery health scare, which was pretty strange given that Chimaev's last battle with illness nearly ended his career. But for the next few months, the only news we got from Khamzat was him yapping about getting a title shot. That was until he was booked for a fight against former middleweight champion Robert Whittaker, set to take place on June 22nd in Saudi Arabia. A brief point worth noting here is that 4 of Khamzat's 7 UFC fights have taken place in the United Arab Emirates. This would have been his first fight in Saudi Arabia, but his 5th UFC fight to take place in the Middle East in general. Part of this seems to stem from his connections to Kadyrov, who has been repeatedly sanctioned by the US government. Another issue for Khamzat is that while he lived and trained primarily in Sweden, he was not a Swedish citizen and did not have a Swedish passport. According to his BJJ coach, Alan Nascimento, Chimaev only had a Russian passport. By all accounts, this fact was the reason Chimaev decided to leave Sweden and his longtime gym, All Stars Training Center, in favor of Abu Dhabi. In 2023, he was able to get a 10-year visa and apply for a UAE passport, and he now trains out of the Akhmat Fight Club, which is owned by, you guessed it, his buddy Kadyrov. I think this fact makes it all the more interesting that the UFC would book Khamzat in a fight against Robert Whittaker. In the last 10 years, Whittaker hasn't lost a fight to somebody who isn't a current or former middleweight champ. So this is about as close as you can get to fast-tracking Chimaev into a title shot, if he won. Either way, the fight wasn't meant to be, at least not at the time. On June 13th, just 9 days before the scheduled fight with Robert Whittaker, there were reports that Khamzat was out of the fight. His coach, Muhammad Askirkanov, shared an image of Chimaev in the hospital on his Instagram stories. Shortly after, Dana White made the news official by saying that Khamzat was out of the fight because he had become violently ill. As with Chimaev's other bouts with illness, there seemed to be a fair amount of confusion regarding what exactly happened. In an Instagram post discussing Khamzat's withdrawal from the fight, his manager, Majdi Shamas, would place the blame on a persistent illness that Khamzat had been battling for major parts of his training camp, which could not be cured in time, adding that Chimaev had been in and out of hospitals, but the condition had been kept within his team. A few days later, while again speaking to Jim Rome, Dana expressed uncertainty regarding Chimaev's future due to his continued battles with illness. On the 17th, Khamzat broke his silence on the matter, but didn't reveal anything in terms of an explanation for his withdrawal, simply saying, "We always plan something, but Allah has his own plans for us. Alhamdulillah." End quote. After Robert Whittaker knocked out Aliskerov on the 22nd, Khamzat would again speak out, congratulating Bobby Knuckles and saying that they weren't done. When Rob was asked about this call-out a few days later, he responded to it in the best way possible, in my opinion.
He sort of said, "Oh, we'll see you soon," those sorts of things. Is that a fight that you would be happy to reschedule, or is it a bit of a risk now agreeing to a fight knowing that Khamzat may potentially pull out? You know, what are your thoughts on where we stand with Khamzat?
Well, I will say, like, it says "see you soon." It's like, where? You can't get into any country. Where you gonna see me, bro?
Middle East.
As a bit of a side note, Chimaev saying "see you soon" to other fighters has become a bit of a meme in and of itself. He said something of that nature to a number of notable fighters from 170 up to 205 without actually fighting any of them. With little concrete information about Khamzat's condition, it has led some people to speculate. For example, Bo Nickel voiced rumors that partying was to blame and implicated Darren Till in Chimaev's downfall.
I think he's probably overtraining. Does he get sick?
Well, I don't think he's overtraining. I think he's overpartying.
I
don't know. Probably. I don't know. What else would it be? I've just heard rumors about like him and Till and stuff, like crazy stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Till was quick to respond on Twitter, stating that he hadn't seen Khamzat in a long time and he is devoted to his religion. While I believe this to be the case, it's worth noting that it's not the first time such rumors have cropped up about Chimaev. Khamzat's former All-Stars training partner, Alexander Gustafsson, would also give his perspective on the matter when interviewed by CryptoSportsBetting.com, a very legitimate news outlet, I'm sure. Quote, "The guy gets ill. There is something with his body that reacts to hard training because he is the hardest worker in the room. He's always been the hardest worker. They have to run some tests and see what the background is, whether there is something in his body that's reacting to the hard training because he trains very hard. I hope they find what it is and take care of the problem and he gets better. He very easily catches a cold, for example, a running nose, coughing, symptoms that are not a big deal at all. We all get that. But I've seen when he increases his training a lot. I know his body reacts differently to the training. I don't know where it comes from. It's crazy how he reacts to the training these days." End quote. Personally, I believe this is an important aspect to understanding Hamzat's current situation, because it's quite similar to comments we heard from Hamzat's manager after his bouts with COVID. And it's reminiscent about what Andreas Michael said after UFC 279. His body doesn't react well to hard training, but even more importantly, he's unwilling to not train hard. So it doesn't seem like he ever learned his lesson from years ago about pushing himself too hard when he was sick. Hamzat has since gone on to give more information about the illness that took him out of his fight with Robert Whittaker. In mid-June, he engaged in a lengthy interview with Aslanbek Badaev. Now, the interview was not in English, and there doesn't appear to be any captions or transcript in English, so I can't say with any certainty what he actually said. Nevertheless, a few different news outlets have translated portions of the interview, and they largely agree on what he said. The gist of Hamzat's comments on his illness appear to be that he had a lung infection as a result of constantly being in air conditioning in Abu Dhabi. Apparently, he also claimed that he suffered from immune failure due to stress, and this led to a number of stints in and out of the hospitals. This was treated with antibiotics as well as time spent in the mountain air. As I said a moment ago, it's hard for me to know if this translation is accurate, and even if it is, we can't be sure that Hamzat is telling the whole truth anyway. Nevertheless, it doesn't paint a great picture. This is the third time Hamzat has faced a major setback due to illness. Fourth, if you give credence to Andreas Michael's interpretation of the events of 279. And this is just what has been mentioned publicly. But I'd argue the situation is worse than it seems on a surface level. This was the second time in the span of 6 months that Hamzat has suffered some mysterious, life-threatening illness. That's not normal, especially from a 30-year-old who should be in the prime of his life. Something is deeply wrong here. By the admission of his own manager, the people involved would rather be secretive about Hamzat's health and keep plowing ahead. Consequences be damned. The UFC has gone forward with the plan to rebook Chimaev and Whittaker for UFC 308, which is a few weeks away. At this point, I'm kind of skeptical that Hamzat will make it to the cage, or if he'll have another mysterious health scare that forces him out of the fight. With all that said, I think there is another issue for Chimaev that could potentially be as much of a risk to his career as his illness. That being his relationship with Ramzan Kadyrov. Part 4. Taking dictation. There is simply too much history surrounding Ramzan Kadyrov to get into in this video. It's a subject that could quite literally fill multiple videos on its own, and journalists like Karim Zidan have been documenting his reign for years. In the context of this video, Kadyrov is the brutal dictator of Chechnya, or the Chechen Republic, an autonomous region within Russia. Since he came to power in 2007, Kadyrov has ruled Chechnya with an iron fist. He retains almost absolute and unchallenged control over the Chechen people, largely through fear, human rights abuses, and a cult of personality. During his reign, a number of his opponents have been assassinated despite being in other countries like Turkey, Germany, and the UAE at the time. In fact, a major aspect of Kadyrov's fear campaign is his ability to reach his critics, even if they no longer live in the country. He suppresses journalism and has routinely threatened journalists and human rights workers. During his time as the leader of Chechnya, a number of attacks have been carried out on journalists, including multiple murders. He is also known to threaten average citizens for everyday critiques of his regime, including actual children at times. Under the Kadyrov regime, abductions and forced disappearances have become so commonplace that, according to Human Rights Watch, they constitute a crime against humanity in and of themselves. Arguably the most infamous example of Kadyrov's human rights violations have been the country's gay purges. Since at least 2017, Chechen men accused of being gay have been systematically rounded up and held in a concentration camp, where I'm sure you can imagine what happens to them. The number of men who have been detained by Kadyrov's regime is said to be over 100, but the true number will likely never be known, in part because forced disappearances are such a common fact of life in Chechnya, but also because the government and Kadyrov himself have maintained that no such actions have taken place. In fact, the party line has been that there are no gay people in Chechnya, as once stated by Kadyrov during an interview with HBO Real Sports.
Это ерунда. У нас таких людей нету. Нету у нас геев.
The human rights abuses of the Kadyrov regime have led him and members of his government, as well as his family, which are often the same people, to be sanctioned numerous times by the American government since 2017. By this point, I'm guessing that you're beginning to understand that he is a pretty horrible tyrant who is oppressing an entire region of people, which makes his involvement in MMA a rather important issue worth talking about. You may have heard of the term sports washing at some point recently. It's the process by which oppressive governments attempt to change their image through sports. A perfect example of this can be seen with the way Gulf states like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar have been dumping almost incomprehensible amounts of money into major sporting events. But as Kareem Zidane explained during an interview with Chapo Trap House's Felix Biederman, Kadyrov's approach to sports washing is a bit different than most.
We're starting actually with December 2022. One of his sons, this kid named Ali, his middle child, he decided he wanted to become a professional fighter. And for months, he had been training with Khamzat Chimaev. Like, they'd actually travel, go see other UFC fighters and train with them as if he was an actual fighter, right? And this would all get posted on Instagram, and Kadyrov would promote it and talk about how, look at my son, the fighter. And eventually this kid debuts for Kadyrov's own promotion, Absolute Championship Ahmed. Of course, he's debuting in Kadyrov's promotion and takes part in this extremely obviously fixed fight and wins. And here was what I called an example of Kadyrov using this dynastic propaganda. He's using MMA as a way to say, look, my offspring are strong, and this dynasty, this legacy I will leave is going to continue to rule Chechnya onwards and onwards. He hasn't only built himself a cult of personality, he's built one for the entire Kadyrov clan, and combat sports play such a crucial role in that.
Over the years, Ramzan Kadyrov has attempted to use combat sports as a way to reinforce his cult of personality. He regularly flies out well-known combat sports figures, such as Mike Tyson and Floyd Mayweather, to bolster his strongman persona. He has also brought in a cornucopia of prominent MMA fighters, such as Fabricio Verdum, Frank Mir, Kamaru Usman, Justin Gaethje, and Henry Cejudo, just to name a few. However, Kadyrov's MMA aspirations do not end with photo ops with famous fighters. In 2014, Kadyrov formed the Akhmat Sports Club, named after his father and first president of Chechnya, Akhmat Kadyrov. In 2018, the Akhmat Sports Club would merge with the Chechen MMA promotion Absolute Combat Berkut and become Absolute Championship Akhmat. It should also be noted that Kadyrov uses Fight Club Akhmat as a training ground for his special forces unit known as the Kadyrovites. And Kadyrov's combat sports interests are run by one of the most powerful men in Chechnya, a man named Abu Zaid Vizmirodov, the head of Chechnya's special forces, as well as Kadyrov's own personal security. As revealed by HBO Real Sports in 2017, many of those who train at FCA facilities and fail to become MMA fighters end up being funneled into the military or police force. Through these promotions, Kadyrov has organized MMA events within Chechnya and internationally. Arguably the most infamous of these events took place on October 4th of 2016. The Grand Prix Akhmat 2016 event featured fights involving children under 12. 3 of the children involved were Kadyrov's sons, and his 10-year-old son, Akhmat, won his fight via knockout. The event drew widespread criticism due to the nature of having young children engage in full-contact MMA. One of the most vocal critics was MMA legend Fedor Emelianenko, who was the president of the Russian MMA Union at the time. In an Instagram post made on October 6th, Fedor claimed that World Fighting Championship Akhmat lied about the fights between children being exhibition matches. In reality, they were fully fledged MMA matches. However, children under 12 were not allowed to take part in MMA matches per the Russian Federation rules. Furthermore, athletes under 21 were required to wear helmets and pads, while those under 17 were also obliged to wear a t-shirt or rash guard. Fedor would go on to express outrage at Kadyrov for putting on fights between children due to the irreparable damage it could cause them, both physically and psychologically. 4 days later, on October 12th, Emelianenko's 16-year-old daughter was attacked by unnamed assailants while on her way home from school. As a result, she was taken to the Research Institute of Children's Emergency Surgery and Traumatology, where she was diagnosed with a contusion of the chest and abdomen. By all accounts, she had been kicked in the chest, and according to the police reports, she was unwilling to identify who assaulted her. On the 14th, Kadyrov would release a statement on the attack via a press release on the Chechen government website. In the press release, he stated that the incident needed to be investigated thoroughly, and those responsible be punished to the fullest extent of the law. However, he also claimed that the attack was probably intended to incite ethnic hatred and cause a public outcry. It's somewhat unclear to me what has come of the story in the years since. I've read that the investigation was called off and the Emelianenko family stopped working with the police. You could interpret this in a variety of ways, of course. I've also seen people incorrectly state that Kadyrov said Fedor realized his mistake after the attack, but that's not true. He made that statement several days earlier in his post calling for people to stop attacking Fedor on social media. Either way, it's an ominous comment. Though there seems to be little in the way of hard evidence linking Kadyrov to the attacks on Fedor's daughter, it fits his MO. It doesn't matter who you are or where you are, he can get to you. Even the head of the Russian MMA union, who has ties to Vladimir Putin, is an untouchable. At this point, you might be wondering how a man like Kadyrov seems to be so entrenched in MMA, with many of his fighters fighting for major MMA promotions. Much of Kadyrov's operations within the wider MMA world have been facilitated through top MMA manager Ali Abdelaziz. Ali represents several Fight Club Akhmat fighters who are currently signed with the UFC, and most of the fighters who have visited Chechnya have been managed by Dominance MMA. That said, Ali has remained rather opaque in regards to his understanding of the man he's so intimately connected to. When pressed on the issue by Luke Thomas in 2019, Ali essentially played dumb and pretended not to know anything about what was going on in the Chechen Republic.
A lot of people say a lot of shit, right? I don't know what this man in Chechnya think about gay, not gay. This is, but the whole thing is, this is, I don't know nothing about it because I don't believe anything the media says. If I don't see it in my eye, I don't believe it.
Then we have Kadyrov's relationship with the UFC, which is murkier. While the UFC doesn't maintain a direct public relationship with him, there are connections. Kadyrov's right-hand man, Abdulzayed Basmiradov, has appeared in photos with UFC matchmaker Sean Shelby. Moreover, Ramzan has been seen at several UFC events, especially those that take place in the Middle East, and they act as a form of soft power to him. Multiple fighters training out of Fight Club Akhmat have also made it to the UFC, such as Abdul Karim Edilov, Ruslan Magomedov, Said Nurmagomedov, and Magomed Ankalaev. He also has ties to many prominent fighters in MMA who do not directly train with FCA, like Khabib Nurmagomedov. But there is perhaps no other fighter as deeply associated with Kadyrov and more important to his interests than Khamzat Chimaev. Kadyrov has been openly praising Chimaev for years and showering him with gifts, like a luxury BMW which Khamzat John Jones shortly afterward. No problem, Kadyrov would just buy him more. Starting in 2022, Chimaev also began training several of Kadyrov's sons, and again took part in more ridiculous sparring sessions where the princelings appear to hold their own against an elite UFC fighter. Most notably, Chimaev cornered Ramzan's son, Ali Kadyrov, during his MMA debut against Islam Akbarov at ACA 150 in December of 2022. Seemingly to repay the favor, Ali, as well as another of Kadyrov's sons, Adam, would corner Khamzat in his fight against Kamaru Usman at UFC 294. In all honesty, this is probably just the tip of the iceberg. If you skim Chimaev's social media accounts, you will find examples of him alongside Kadyrov or his sons, or reciting propaganda for the regime. Kadyrov was at Chimaev's wedding and allegedly helped facilitate his marriage. In November of last year, Khamzat posted that he believed Kadyrov helped him return to life, not only for himself, but for the entire Chechen people. It's hard to know whether Khamzat truly believes this, or if he is simply saying what he thinks he needs to say. Whatever the case may be, I think it's safe to say that at this point, Kadyrov is so deeply entwined in Chimaev's life that we will probably never know the full extent of it. So much of Kadyrov's machinations involve projecting an image of masculinity and power. Khamzat Chimaev presents the opportunity to display those ideals on one of the highest stages available. To have a Chechen fighter capture a UFC title would be the ultimate validation of his vision for Chechnya. In that light, I think the vaguely threatening message he sent to Chimaev after Khamzat talked about retiring makes a great deal more sense. Kadyrov cannot allow Chimaev to quit, because it would be the refutation of the mythology that he has worked so hard to develop. It seems as though Khamzat is being drawn deeper and deeper into this morass, and unfortunately, he appears to be following in almost exactly the same path of another man, Abdul Karim Edilov. Part 5. The Edilov Parallel. A one-time UFC fighter who saw his debut delayed due to a positive test result for meldonium, Edilov was once known as Kadyrov's favorite fighter. Edilov had headlined several early Akhmat MMA events before his short stint with the UFC. After picking up his lone UFC victory in September of 2017, Edilov was released by the promotion, though the reason for this are unclear to me. Ultimately, it wouldn't matter much, as in the following years he found himself climbing the ladder of Kadyrov's regime. Initially, he started out as essentially a babysitter, a role you'll recognize is now being filled by Khamzat Chimaev. From this point, Edilov would be promoted to positions in the Chechen government. Despite his meteoric rise through the Chechen political system, Edilov would eventually fall out of favor with the regime. In September of 2022, rumors began to spread from Chechen dissidents that Edilov had been convicted of drug use. He was never seen again after this point. On November 23rd of 2022, only 9 months after being promoted to his position as deputy chairman, the official website for the government of Chechnya announced that Abdul Karim Edilov had resigned of his own initiative. Just a few weeks later, it was reported that he had died. The manner and circumstances of his death remain a mystery. Nonetheless, there have been some rumors, as explained by Karim Zidan.
One of them is that Abdulkarim Edilov pissed off one of Kadyrov's relatives, who happened to be more influential than him, tried to extort him at one point, and that's what led to him getting killed. The other story, I'll admit, is a little more interesting, and it actually involves one of Kadyrov's kids, Adam.
I didn't know I was doing that bad.
At one point,
hold up, I'm gonna get my headphones out, get the mic set up for real, turn off the videos, and let's get serious. Let's get super serious. After 2 hours of playing, now we're getting serious.
they were in Dubai together. It was Adam's bodyguard, and Abdulkarim Edilov. And they had some drugs on them, some sort of amphetamines that they had, which, by the way, these things are quite popular in Chechnya. Like, there's far more drug abuse that goes on amongst these Kadyrov's ruling elite than they'd like to let on. So, you know, Abdulkarim Edilov and his other bodyguard have these drugs on them. Adam insists that he wants some, and they give him. And he just insists then thereafter that he wants to drive. So they let this 15-year-old kid drive. He gets into a car accident and kills a couple of people. And this leads to a massive issue that leads to them getting back. Instead, they have to get him sent back to Chechnya. Kadyrov flips out that this has happened. And yeah, he gets rid of the evidence, being Abdulkarim Edilov and the bodyguard, which, by the way, the bodyguard was also killed.
In a vacuum, the story of Abdulkarim Edilov isn't all that important. In the context of Chimaev's story, though, the parallels between him and Edilov are alarming. Khamzat is following in Abdulkarim Edilov's footsteps, and I doubt that is lost on him. He trained with Edilov and probably knows more about the story than most of us. But at this point, what could he do? Khamzat probably shares a lot of the same views as Kadyrov, but even if he didn't, what options does he have? How could he refuse him? He can't. It's that simple. As long as he can keep fighting, I think he can stay out of the fray, for the most part. But that is a huge if, given Chimaev's repeated health problems. If he outlives his usefulness in the role of a fighter, or does something to fall out of favor with the regime, the consequences could be disastrous. Part 6. Conclusions and final thoughts. When I made my video talking about UFC 279, I said I felt Khamzat was a powder keg, waiting to explode or implode, collapsing his career on top of him. I still think that is true. It's been 2 years since that event, and I don't think we have a better idea of what the future holds for Chimaev. If anything, I think the picture is even more cloudy. What have we actually learned about Khamzat since September of 2022? In that time span, he's fought once and had multiple mysterious bouts with illness. Additionally, the major wins he's had in the UFC haven't aged that well. Li Jingliang is 1-2 since they fought. Gilbert Burns is 2-3. Kevin Holland is 3-3, but against a lower level of talent. It's also too early to tell how that win over Usman will pan out in the long run. Yet, he's effectively fallen upwards into what appears to be a #1 contender fight for the second time. It's not impossible to imagine Chimaev fighting for a middleweight title, or even winning one. But the days of believing Chimaev to be a 2 or 3 division champ are over. Even more critically, I don't think he can fight consistently enough to establish a reign of dominance in any division. It would be unfair to say that the first half of his prime was a waste, but he has not accomplished anywhere near as much as we thought he would. He's not old by the standards of middleweight, but he is 30 and projected to fight once a year at best. By the time Israel Adesanya was Chimaev's age, he had already won the belts, and he was a latecomer to MMA. What separates Chimaev and Izzy, though, is consistency and work rate. Adesanya consistently fought 2 to 3 times a year while a champion. It's extremely difficult to become a historically significant fighter when you only fight once a year, and I don't think he can start fighting frequently enough to challenge the...
Okay. We're going in with hijack. What's the girl's name? What's up, Gia? Got the quad gun XP going. Leveling up. Last, well, it won't be the last AR, but it's the last one I need. Mastery camo grind. What's the name of that camo? No. Pyroclastic? Pyroclastic. That doesn't roll off the tongue. Uh-oh. And I'm not moving. Okay, yeah, so like nothing's working. I said I'm just gonna get out of here. That sucks. All right. Yeah, my controls just stopped. That was...
the reigns of legends like Izzy or Anderson Silva, even in that division. He could still potentially have a good career, but I think the ship has sailed in the predictions of Chimaev being in any GOAT conversations, let alone fighting multiple times per year and or changing divisions. Maybe it could happen if he stopped getting 30-24'd by the flu, but I don't think that's likely. More importantly, it still remains to be seen if he can even get past somebody like Robert Whittaker. Well, technically, it remains to be seen if he can even get into the cage with Robert Whittaker. But you know what I mean. That is the core problem. There are still so many questions and unknowns with Khamzat Chimaev. First, we have the known unknowns. Like, can he stay healthy? Does he have 5-round cardio? Will he be physical enough to manhandle middleweights the same way he did with the welterweights? What do his chin and punching power look like up a division, etc.? Then there are the unknown unknowns, such as his relationship with Kadyrov. That is a wild card that, at any given moment, could potentially derail Chimaev's career in a plethora of ways that we have no ability to predict. Beyond those issues, we have the sundry strange events that are always happening around him, like the recent cryptocurrency scam controversy. Frankly, I don't really give a shit about this because I feel like if you get caught up in a minor celebrity's meme coin pump and dump scheme, it's kind of your own fault. To paraphrase Mixed Molly Whoppery, if you're saying Lambos and food stamps, it's probably going to be food stamps.
This nipple shot here of his drawing is going on for way too long.
And even if it's not food stamps today, it might not be food stamps tomorrow. But on a long enough timeline, you're a food stamps guy. You're not a fucking Lambo guy.
If you want to watch an in-depth take on the Smashcoin scam, I'd really recommend Mixed Molly Whoppery's video because he approached it from some very insightful angles that I haven't seen from many other people. Where I really agree with him is the fact that above everything else, this incident just seems sloppy and poorly thought out.
So like Khamzat's manager has a direct line to both of those companies. If he was unsure and as oblivious as he's making out, why wouldn't he reach out to Jai's Coin of Block Acid for advice? Hey, do you guys think this looks like a scam? And of course, both companies...
I don't even know why I'm watching this. Freaking snoozies. me something I don't already know.
Hello, my name is Emily, as you may or may not know, and today we are going to be talking about
Hi, Emily. Hi, Gia. Welcome back. The control's gonna work this time around. My thumbs were doing nothing. Nothing. Fucking hate getting old, man. You start making sounds like you never make that kind of shit when you're stretch. Worst. Never do it. Never get old, kids. You're already old. Drugs. But you're old. Ooh, jawbreaker just broke your face. Hacked. Yoink. Get killed by that hacked. Did you destroy it? Probably. Uh-oh. 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 You guys are sneaking in. Oh, no. Uh-oh. Ah! Yep. Didn't help. My mic working? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's freaking working all right. Got him. There's something up with the stickies. Let me switch to frag to see if it seems like there's a huge delay in throwing it. Going frag again. We're going frags. Oh, good. Quick enough. And I got a friend who's he's in his 50s, I think like mid 50s at the oldest. Man, he looks so young. He looks like he's in his like early 30s. What's your secret, man? Like he went as Ash for his Halloween thing. He looked like a younger version. He looked younger than Bruce Campbell did when he made Evil Dead 2. And what is he, like in his 20s? Maybe? I don't know. But still. I look pretty young for my age, too. Still look pretty ancient. My grays give me away. But the secret to staying young looking, which I think is the same situation for the friend I was just talking about, no kids. You don't want to age yourself. Put your ego to rest and don't spawn more annoying people. Because I'm sorry, even if I had kids, I'd be like, you're annoying. I don't like you. They wouldn't like me either, so what's the fucking point? Doink. I see you. Oh my god. Let's go. Jawbreaker. Oh, oh, oh. Whoa. Man, I dodged that shit. Oh man, where's my head hasn't done yet. Where? Is that my friend Jawbreaker shooting whatever he's shooting? Coming for you. Sneaky bitch. Sneaky bitch. Not so lucky. Hear me? There's Jawbreaker. I see, bitch. That even explode? The explosions in this game are like farts in the wind. I hear a creepy crawler, spider, bot. Where are ya? Did you see that? I heard a spider bot behind me. It made me turn around, and someone came up behind me and murdered me while I was trying to find a spider bot. I don't even know if it was an enemy spider bot. But you gotta admit, everybody loves the spider bots. Like, everyone, I was having a metal face hugger attached to their wall. Oh, my heart. Oh, get shit on, buddy. Oh, man. Oh, jeez. What happened? What happened, man? Oh, Dr. Ray Gun, go back to med school, bro. Oh, Jawbreaker, my friend. Good friend. I hate to do it to you. Oh, nope. Okay. Fair's fair. There's a smiley for you. Your goddamn spider bots. Jawbreaker. Sassy bitch. Get owned. Good. I see Jawbreaker. Coming for you. Oh, a trade? Is that a trade? That was a trade. That was a trade. Do a shot. Oh, what's that? Nope, wait. I love that when you go to hack something and you don't hack anything, it goes. It's like stupid. There's nothing there. Not so lucky. Shit, me neither. Doug. You might be a doctor. I'm the one giving out prescriptions for bullets. Oh, come on now. Oh, Jesus. That should have been mine. Mine. really. Can't tell how my noise gate's working, if it's too strong or not. But it's picking up more, it's not. I'm assuming it's good because it's like it's basically it's just the default. I was trying to adjust it before. It's like it seemed like I was getting the cutoff wrong, but I couldn't even tell. I didn't want to go through the whole rigmarole to like recording it and listening back to see, because I can't hear what OBS is picking up, at least as far as my mic or anything really. Besides like the gameplay and the desktop audio. That's how we do it. Hey, Emily.
Types of comments on the internet that some people might find annoying, irksome, perhaps even a little
JD money bags, baby.
bit irritating. And by people, I mean low-key me. You know, it's not like these comments are overtly ruining my day.
If I can go positive
right?
just once, I would love it.
You know, it's not making me feel like I got a promotion at work either. Though sometimes getting a promotion at work is a bad thing because it means more work. I remember when I was a nurse and they would like try and make me do higher things. I would be like, I'm glad that you think I'm competent, but I don't want to do all of this anyways. So yes, annoying comments on the internet. Trust and believe, there are many. There are many, unfortunately. I know a lot of you guys are new here, which, welcome to the party. But I've been on the internet for over 10 years, okay? A decade. My internet presence is old enough to be in 5th grade crying at the kitchen table over math homework. My internet presence is as old as a child that, you know, you can kind of start to see the repercussions of always giving them the iPad when they were a baby. You know, it's like they're old enough now developmentally to see, oh, maybe we did something wrong. You know, I'm practically a vet.
Some for you. Ooh, the sweet sounds of here. Okay, we're drinking violet. Oh, come on. Kidding me? Freaking kidding me? I turn back on music and voices and stuff because it's just too quiet with me. It might be. It was getting to me though. Yeah, well, let's see. Let's see how it goes. If they all don't get killed, they probably will. Or shut the dialogue. Do not away, but yoink. Oh, I don't see. I should turn the voices off. That was stupid. Like, don't do the talking for me, lady. Okay? I want to say yoink.
Capture zone contested.
Oh my God! What? Okay. During this game, one thing it never made me appreciate the way Call of Duty does more. This game with her annoying. Every sector has to have its own working, whatever you call it. Announcer. Thanks, Funky Dog. Thanks for the 100 biddies. Fucking night of birds.
Capture zone contested. Enemies are going for C.
Just let me know. Is he British?
Enemies on capture zone B.
Oh, British robot. Why would any robot have any regional accent?
Team taking capture zone B.
Clankers have their own stupid clanker language. Don't fucking say British. Fine. Freaking robot clanker.
Capture zone contested.
Up. Okay. Gotta catch up, yo. What? What would be nice?
Enemies are going for C.
Time to die. Enemies on C. It's a fun sound. Felt like I was playing Pokemon or something. Oh. Okay.
Enemies on capture zone B. Zone contested.
Oh, whoa. Did I not get that guy? No.
Goons going for C.
Ooh. Say goons? Gross, bro. Talk about your British robot clanker freak.
It appears we are losing B.
Oh, well, it appears you're annoying. I'm gonna turn this on. Oh, what? That's like that ultra. This is just like
zone contested.
Unless you got the whole team firing on it, it's like third move.
Zone owned by you lot.
Zone owned by you lot. Jolly good. Shut the fuck. We all jolly about fucker.
Arcade sure would be nice.
Yeah, I know. Who are we talking to? We talking to someone from Libertad? You know what? He might not be around, okay? So he might be busy. And shy at. Think about that.
Get in the zones. Keep the goons out of the zones.
Why do you call them goons, bro? No. Talk about your goons, bro. Ugh. Grade. Big shot.
It appears we are losing B.
Oh god. I've been playing Dead Sect for a while, and I haven't had the announcer on 20 months at this point. And I had no idea that's what it sounded like, and horrible. It is something to make fun of, but it is legit annoying. If you say the same shit over and over again, it appears the enemy is on your ass ball. Shit.
Little help, please.
Oh, Trey. Happy. Take a shot.
It appears we are losing.
I wish you could take back smiles. That was an accidental. No, I did not smile to that. We should have like a. Oh, there's blue. They haven't changed the music, huh? Like in months, like ever. This is the same as before. Oh, it is pretty sexy. Let's go. Let's go. To the show. Oh. The hell? What you know? Galley her.
Zone is contested. team won, which means I also win by proxy.
Yeah, I thought that they would change some music. They should. What's up with this Goomba? I mean, the dude kept on talking about goons the whole match. Oh, hey, thanks. What did I do? No. What? How am I? Oh, wait, no. Oh, I did bad. I did really bad. I can't tell I'm doing bad when I'm playing this.
A veteran at the ripe age of 25, which I know to Gen Alpha probably does genuinely sound old as fucking bones. 25. They're like, yeah, no, a veteran at 25, that sounds right. So y'all, I have had my fair share of receiving annoying comments, seeing my peers receive annoying comments, and you don't need to be an influencer or a content creator to know that people are annoying on the internet. Like, that's just like, you know, yeah. Pyramids spotted in Egypt. You know, people can make an entire career out of being annoying on the internet. It's not necessarily an untapped market, okay? Some may argue that I'm even a participant. But hey, being annoying on the internet, it's a lot harder than it looks. A lot harder than it looks, okay? It takes a lot of brainstorming, organization, creativity, which is why it's such a good thing that we have today's sponsor, MWIII, to help us with that. MWIII is a tool for organizing your creative projects, providing an online canvas for your free MWIII account by clicking on the link in the description below. And thank you to MWIII for sponsoring today's video. Anyways, listen, back to comments online. I understand freedom of speech, right? I get it. Hey, you have it, I have it. Why don't we all use it in, you know, appropriate ways? It's not against the law to be annoying, okay? If that were the case, then many of us would have been put in the slammer long ago and maybe even get in the electric chair, I fear. Also, I never want to infringe upon someone else's right, their God-given.
Oh, Ace is about to bitch about Last Stand.
Team Deathmatch. Descriptions right
What's
there
up,
in the
my name
name.
is Ace, and today we're going to be going over all of the launch equipment, field upgrades, wildcards, and also a brief section on perks that we can expect to see at launch for Black Ops 6. Now, they did also reveal all of the score streaks. I plan on covering that in a separate video simply because I want to be able to dive into quite a bit of depth with that video. So without further ado, let's start this off with all of the equipment we can expect to see at launch for multiplayer. And we'll start this off with the tactical category. And with this, of course, we have our concussion and flashbang grenade. No surprises there. We also have a spy cam, and this one is brand new. And the description for this says, quickly mark enemies and hostile equipment and score streaks for your team. And that really doesn't give us too much of an indication of how this actually works in-game, like what the characteristics of it are. Like, is it a placeable item or an item that you, like, pull up and it just quickly marks everything that's in your field of view? Honestly, at this stage, we don't really know, and time will have to tell on that one. But then, of course, after that, we have the smoke grenade, no surprise there. The prox alarm, which we had access to in the beta. The stim shot, which they've actually adjusted from the beta, so the stim shot will now automatically regenerate without having to use any perks.
I can't pay attention to both.
Unfortunate.
Quiet. Shut up. Get your seizures up. All hit him. Unfortunate.
A little health, please?
Shut up. They don't even say reloading. Like, they have something to say about, like, everything, but when you go reloading, they can't go, like, reloading. I guess they don't have to copy everything COD does, but it just makes sense, though. Yoink! Yoink, yoink. That. Where are you going? Where are you going? Who's behind you? God, come on. Yeah, no.
Vicious circle of vengeance.
what? Shut up. No. Circle of Vengeance. The dude killed me, so I can't. Circle of nothing. It's a flat line, friend. Oxy came. Kids are just. I mean, they're. We've hit the restart button as far as like coming up with shit. I think like Gen X. I mean, not Gen. Sorry, Gen Alpha. Super corny, man. Y'all are corny. It's like the kind of shit y'all come up with, like, would have gotten made fun of when I was a kid, but now it's like, that's what you're all about. You don't need to check yourself. The long, hard looking. Why am I so corny? Ask yourself. Kids. Ask yourself, am I corny? Am I lame? No, that's ableist. I don't like to say that anymore, but still. Nice shot, Ozzy King. See, although that is, I do. Well, maybe you do, because all you kids are corny now. Probably like, yeah, Ozzy, the heaviest band. First metal act in Volta. Get in here, 13.
And hot.
Doink. Oh. That was yours, wasn't it? They were salty. Salty, I took their, current. Ah, shit. That was gonna happen. Oh, squeaky chair, love it. Makes me feel like Wings of Redemption whenever I squeak my chair.
Your team is winning. I advise pressing the advantage.
Yeah, it's picking up. Real good.
Flames consume your flesh. Ooh, unfortunate. Go, make some orphans.
Jesus. Wait, what? You just say make some orphans? Like, what do you mean, like, everyone has kids? Like, I don't know. I hope none of my team members have kids. Weird. Who's watching?
How? First aid sure would be nice.
Yeah, we can't have everything. Thanks. Thumbs up to you too, friend. I wish I had my hat to throw down there and walk around. You know, that little red hat. Oh, my cat wants to jump up on my lap. Oh, maybe not. Heard what he said. Understood.
The homicide.
Turn around. Alright, buddy? Yeah, they're good. Alright. Naked shield. Guess have the life.
Active camo.
Need to reload. Get
Oh.
I see you're culling the goon population.
Have a go. You just say goon again? That's it. I reached my goon limit. That was fun. She's like, ah! Yeah, I forgot I switched to frag, didn't I? Ooh. Oof. Oof. Hit for you. One hurt. Yeah, I think I'm gonna switch to COD after this match.
You can't hide. Dispatched.
I like going like.
Lucas on track to win. You. That's who.
Fuck. I'm still positive for the next one. Someone's tearing it up.
Service outage.
Get hacked.
Your team won, which means I also win by proxy.
I don't care. You should really let you respond to that announcer. Say the dumbest shit on earth. Just kind of like I don't want to hear it. I like that skin on the right. Whatever's happening there. Can I get a clap? No.
Then, of course, we have the decoy from the beta, which, interestingly, with this version of the decoy, it will stick to surfaces. I didn't actually manage to play around with it at all throughout the beta, so I didn't realize that it was different in that way. And then finally, for tacticals, we have the shock charge, which with their description of this, they mention it's an electrical trap that sticks to surfaces and electrocutes enemies, stunning them. And that's pretty interesting because typically with a shock charge, another aspect of it is if you get affected by the shock charge, it's going to force you to fire your gun and also force you into hip fire. And there was no mention of that in the description. So we'll have to see if they've actually made some adjustments to the shock charge or if it's just a case of the description not being very thorough here. In either case, that's it for the tactical equipment at launch. Now let's talk about lethals. And with this, we've got the Molotov, the blast trap, which we did have access to in the beta. It was a little bit annoying since it's like a claymore with a 360-degree radius. Quite surprisingly, we've also got the drill charge. This will be the first time we see a drill charge in a Treyarch game. I didn't see that one coming, but I am happy to see that. I really do enjoy the drill charge. We also have the combat axe, of course, the frag grenade, the sticky grenade, the C4, the thermo grenade, and then finally the impact grenade, which we didn't have access to in the beta, but we have seen a little bit of footage of this. I really hope they balance this one properly where it's basically only a one-hit kill with a direct impact, but give it some better characteristics compared to the others, like maybe a faster throw speed, for instance. I think that would be really nice to see. I also do find it quite interesting that we have both Molotov as well as a thermo grenade. Now, they do have slightly different characteristics, but they both fill a pretty similar role as far as I can tell. And that wraps it up for all of our lethal and tactical equipment. Now let's get into field upgrades. And first, of course, we have all of the beta field upgrades that we had access to. So the assault pack, the trophy system, the neurogas, acoustic amp, and sleeper agent. Although interestingly, with the description they just shared for sleeper agent, it says that kills extend the time. Whereas a blog post we got a little while back where they were discussing some of the changes they're planning on making from beta till launch, in that blog post with sleeper agent, they mentioned they removed the time added when earning eliminations while sleeper agent's active. So I'm curious to see if this was just an oversight on the description here, or if they ended up changing their mind and they're not going to be changing that with sleeper agent. I suspect it's the former rather than the latter, but we will find out soon enough. Then, as for new field upgrades for launch that we didn't have access to in the beta, the first one here is the Spring Mine. And with this one, it's just described as an anti-infantry mine. And we actually saw a tiny bit of gameplay footage from the initial reveal of Black Ops 6. And from the looks of it, it seems to behave just like a Bouncing Betty would. Although since it's a field upgrade, I suspect it's going to be even bigger. But overall, I'm a little bit confused about their decision here with this field upgrade because we have the blast trap in the lethal equipment. And with the blast trap, it's not like a Bouncing Betty that launches up in the air where you have the ability to crouch or go prone under it to avoid damage, or at least avoid lethal damage. Instead, with that blast trap, you just trigger it and it explodes and it deals damage in a 360-degree radius. So as far as we can tell, there's less counterplay to the lethal lethal piece of equipment that you spawn in with every single time, compared to the field upgrade, which you have to charge up, and you'll presumably only get access to this a few times in a match. Now, since the Scattermine is a field upgrade, I suspect it is going to be dealing a lot more damage overall, but from what we can tell based on that little gameplay clip, it does appear there's going to be a lot more counterplay to that than there will be to the blast trap. In either case, the next field upgrade we have access to that wasn't in the beta is the Scrambler, and this is just a placeable field upgrade that creates an area that disrupts enemy equipment, field upgrades, score streaks, and mini-maps. We've seen multiple iterations of this in the past, so no surprises here. Then we've got a brand new and very interesting field upgrade called the Signal Lure, and this one I really like the sounds of. With this, when you activate it, it reveals your position to enemy players, but while it's active, you'll also earn bonus score for kills and for staying alive while it's active. So it's basically the come and get me sort of field upgrade, and I'm very curious to see how this reveals your position. Like, is it just going to be on the mini map, or is there going to be more to it than that? Like, are enemies going to get brief glimpses with like a wall hack at you or something? Either way, I love the sounds of this, and I can't wait to break this down. I'm very excited to see exactly how this works in game and like how much bonus score you get for kills. Are you going to be able to get like your top score streaks really quick?
I'll be right back. Actually, I need to take a nap. Slept like dog shit last night. I'll be back on though. For people like Spinky Monkey Balls, thanks for the 1,000 billion bits. Thanks for the subscription. Buttercup. Thank you.